Sacred Places, the Pantheist Experience, the show where we explore the philosophy of pantheism and the personal experience of nature-centered spirituality. I'm your host, Poffo Ortiz, founder of Biopantheism, the ethics-based codification of pantheism that stresses the importance of biological life and seeks a deeper, more meaningful relationship with the eminent and emergent divinity of nature we call the Omnia. We are all connected, and we are all one. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Sacred Places. I'm your host, Poffo Ortiz. Tonight I have a special guest, Guyus Seralius. He's a longtime friend of mine. One of the original members, actually, of Biopan, going back at least 2 or 3 years. Guyus is a special individual to me. I always remember his YouTube videos, his Forever All, and what is it? It was an explanation of why I view the universe as God, I think, something like that. So I have Guyus with me tonight, and we're just going to talk a little bit about what pantheism means to him and his understanding of it, and some of the concepts related to infinity and eternity and the notion that the universe itself is this perpetual, eternal, immortal system that continues on and with no beginning and no end. So we're basically going to explore the eternal existence of the universe tonight. And I'll go ahead and introduce Guyus now. So Guyus, welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little bit about yourself and what your experience is?
I'll tell a quick little synopsis of my background. I've essentially been a pantheist my whole life, long before I even knew the word pantheism existed. I believe we all basically start out actually as pantheists, including animals and most higher functioning life forms. It's just that for us humans, early on along the way, we learn a complex form of language, and it gets so we get so misled by false ideas. Animals have an advantage in not having a complex language because there is less misinformation. They get to view the world in a more direct, natural way and are actually closer to the truth, I think, than most humans as a result.
Interesting point. I actually have a friend who feels very similar.
They experience the world in a more pure, honest fashion. So I actually think that most of us, before we are contaminated with religious views, that we all kind of start out as pantheists, even though we don't know that word. We all kind of start out as pantheists. We kind of sense that the universe is responsible for it all. So.
Well, certainly children have that natural sense of wonder and awe, and you don't have to teach a child to sort of the experience of novelty. It comes natural to them. And I was about to say I have a friend that has made this point before, that animals are, since they almost experience less subjectivity than we do, they're much more in tune with their environment, and they have what we would generally think of as less intelligence, or they're lower on the scale in terms of consciousness. They may actually, represent a sort of, as we're all sort of differentiated aspects of nature, and we represent this subjective point of view that we're self-aware, and we know we can think and reason, and we're cognizant of our own death and things like that. Animals literally are only focused on the moment, on survival. Yeah. They do so much by instinct, and
we get very distracted by false views that to me seem to derive due to our complex language. If animals could communicate with a more complex language, they would end up with the same problem that we ended up with.
Yeah.
So I was briefly derailed in my youth, very briefly, as most Westerners are, because I was being poorly influenced by the Abrahamic faith, and I was never satisfied with the answers provided by the Judeo-Christian religion. So even at a very young age, I questioned it or never fully bought into it. I think I was around 10 years old when I was somewhat secretly stopped believing in the Abrahamic view of God. And I say secretly because, I knew at that time that mainstream society, at least in the West, would react very negatively if they knew I was a non-believer. And thankfully, my parents weren't all that religious, so that was never a problem.
It's a difficult thing.
They let us explore in all directions, really. And we only briefly went to church for, just very briefly, a few times off and on. But they they didn't really, flock to it either. It didn't suit them. It didn't rub them right either. So we just, and it was a lot of trouble, so yeah, it just didn't rub them right, didn't rub us right. But my parents are still Christians. Or I guess, my dad started actually reading Eckhart Tolle a lot. And
yeah, that's great.
And my mother recently actually admitted that she's not buying into the whole Abrahamic religion. I couldn't believe she said it too. I was actually surprised. I'm not too surprised though, because if you knew her personality, she's very headstrong and outspoken. So, yeah. But it was just neat. It was neat that she came to that realization at this point in her life. I guess that's what it was. Most people would come to that realization earlier on, like after high school or in college or something like that. And so,
people are waking up. Definitely they're recognizing sort of the limitations of organized religion, and you're lucky that your parents were very sort of forward thinking and open minded when it came to that stuff.
Yeah, in fact,
we can all relate, to the oppressive Abrahamic religions a lot. Many of us have come out of it and been very discouraged and disillusioned. And I'd like to get into, your first experience as a pantheist, or sort of your first exposure to it. And how you came to this philosophy,
that actually happened. That actually happened when I was my older brother, who's a year older than me. He introduced. I kind of knew of YouTube, and he somehow was communicating with a YouTuber, and the YouTuber, he was a philosopher, and he used the term pantheism. And because what my brother did was, when he was communicating with this guy in comments, he was expressing some of the views that I had shared with my brother. So I have a huge influence on him as far as my philosophical views. And so the guy came back and said, "It sounds like you're talking about pantheism." In fact, he even made a response video back when YouTube allowed response videos, and he had kind of a following, and so we were, actually kind of impressed that he even mentioned us. But he mentioned that it sounds like you're talking about pantheism. And so my brother later came and asked me and said, "Are you a pantheist? Because, that's what this guy says, your thinking sounds like it's along those lines." And so I didn't know. It sounded like devil worshiping to me. So I went and looked it up. I looked up the term, and I thought, wow, that sounds exactly like, what I believe. And I couldn't even believe that there was actually a term for it, and that this term actually dates back pretty far back in history. And even before the term, I would be learning about Spinoza and Greek philosophers. They basically, had a lot of pantheistic ideas. And I remember being disappointed that I wasn't taught more about this in school at a much younger age. I would have loved that,
Right. So that's fascinating, because it was almost a very organic, intuitive, journey for you. It wasn't
for me,
major influences. It just came about. Through your sort of your contemplation and.
Yeah. You'll hear this from me a lot probably, but what I actually learned a lot of this in certain ways in a bubble, because I came to this, a lot of my ultimate epiphanies long before the internet was even available to the regular public. The military used it, the internet. This goes back to shortly after I graduated high school. So this was around 1992, 93, when I had just a flood of all these thoughts. This was like the it was like a fountain of just thought and making all these connections and making all this processing all these thoughts, and it was just like a gushing waterfall. That's kind of how I compare it. And I think it was around 1993 when I finally came to that conclusion that of this pantheistic view, that it's all this oneness, it's all responsible, and in fact that I am that oneness, that I am the summation of all this. It's like all the energy, whatever, people call it different things, whether you look at it on a materialistic view or on a strictly energy view, but it's all kind of like one ocean of energy. Let's
get into that. I wanted to.
And so, what I wanted to discuss was why I believe that the universe has always existed and always will. And I've tried to discuss this with others, and some understand my reasoning, but many, and probably most, don't. And I don't hold it against anyone if they don't get this view, because it's strongly against the traditional view of the universe that was created and which has an origin. So, and of course, I'm not the first to hold this view, by the way. I later discovered that there were ancient Greek philosophers. I think Parmenides might be his name. I'd have to double check that. But I think he also believed that, you can't just have material just spontaneously come from nothing, and nothing can just all of a sudden go back into nothingness. I
often cite the first law of thermodynamics. The energy can't be created or destroyed. That essentially,
yes. In fact, all creation stories, all creation theories, including the Big Bang, which I plan to get to in a moment, they all violate, the conservation of matter and energy.
Right.
And so, and for a variety of other reasons, I should probably also first quickly provide my definition of the universe, just to avoid any confusion to those who may be listening or will be listening at some future point, because some people's view of the universe does vary a bit. The term universe, according to its original use, means the totality of all things that exist, and that includes all its laws and all of reality, and is synonymous with the word cosmos. So terms like multiverse, multiple universes and parallel universes are relatively new terms that were popularized by mainstream modern science, in my opinion, as a fix to work around the limited, outdated view of a finite universe. So in my view, any and all subsets of the universe may be called parallel worlds, multi-worlds, subworlds, or whatever, but it is all a part of the one infinite universe. Uni meaning one and verse meaning song, so one song. So it's all a part of the all. So you can have these subsets. I know some people like to talk about, you have these parallel worlds that are separate and everything, but in my personal view, I view it all as one universal set, even though it may be divided into subsets. So
sure. Yeah, I have my own distilling, my own sort of ontology when it comes to that, in terms of what the omnia is doing and what the multiverse theory represents and all that stuff. I can get into that later, but
by the way,
I'd like to hear your
by the way, I've always loved, ever since I heard the term you use, omnia. I've always loved that. I like the sound of it, and I even like how short it looks, and I even like how it begins with an O. So the whole thing is just like a perfect term that you must have had that feeling when you first came across that term.
It was sort of an organic process, and yeah, it also involved Peter Moriarty's original his term, the omni unum, which means all in one.
All one, yeah.
I was trying to sort of distinguish myself from him and his codification of pantheism, organismic philosophy and biotheism, And I looked it up, and that the Latin phrase, the Latin word for all or everything is omnia, omni, and then omnia, because actually I think in Arabic there's also a translation that says something that it means love, the greatest love, or something, and it has that almost feminine quality to it with the IA at the end.
Yeah.
To kind of bring back the feminine spirit, that's lacking in the patriarchal religions. And
it's a sexy term.
The masculine, the masculine concept of God, I believe, has just dominated and ruled and caused so much harm. So it's just kind of a way to kind of bring back some of the nurturing,
I like
feminine quality.
Yeah. I even like the phonetics of it, just the way it sounds. I like it.
It also contains the om. I mean, in
Buddhism, that's a good point.
And that's kind of a way you can pronounce it as omnia.
Yeah.
But, what else was I going to say? So sure, there's a lot I could chime in. I don't want to break your flow. But I do have sort of a very comprehensive sort of explanation for what you were saying is dead on, that no one really knows what was before the Big Bang, and they just postulate, and the multiverse and all these things are just ways to get around the idea that it doesn't make sense that the universe just popped out of nothing, but then we can't say, the scientists and theoretical physicists would say, well, we can't say that there's a creator, that God made everything, so we've got to come up with something. So they postulate, and they have all these different crazy theories and stuff. And I just say, look at nature and look at how nature recycles itself, and everything is really a perpetual cyclical model. And yes. I think we're along, we view things in the same way in terms of this. So go ahead.
I'll get into it in a little bit about the Big Bang. When I do get into it, because I'm not completely against it, I do believe that in some respect there is great explosions and crunches, and it's kind of like the heartbeat. The universe has its heartbeat, kind of a thing, and on several different scales, different levels. But first, let me introduce this first line of thinking. I've discovered during many hours of deep contemplation over the years that there are many aspects of the universe that just seem to be independent of evolution or any form of creation, such as mathematical constructs like 1 + 2 = 3, or the three-sided triangle, or the circle, like in geometry, or the golden ratio. And then there are concepts like the color wheel, the musical scales, the yin and yang, the 4 seasons. And this view of eternal concepts can also be applied to things like well-known expressions or truisms, like you shouldn't put all your eggs into one basket, or beauty is in the eye of the beholder, or you can't judge a book by its cover, or every cloud has its silver lining. Tools fall into this category as well, like a shovel or a screwdriver or a fork. And even more remarkable is how the same can be said for like verbs, like the act of running and jumping, or swimming or sitting. There are millions of other concepts, like the concept of a hole, or the concept of on and off, the concept of a cup. Even in literature, there are these eternal literary themes, like the concept of forbidden love among young lovers, as in Romeo and Juliet, or how man tries to play God by constructing a man, but instead creates a monster, like in Frankenstein. So all these concepts could not have been invented by man, but only discovered by man. And they couldn't have been formed through any evolutionary process, or created by any god, or by some first-time Big Bang event. They are unchanging. They're eternal, indestructible. One of my favorites is the concept of the airfoil shape that is incorporated into wings to provide heavier than air flight, which was, just hanging in the air, no pun intended, for, people like the Wright brothers to discover eventually. I mean, even before, this planet was formed, basically, that concept still existed, the airfoil, and the concept of the airplane.
I think I know where you're going with it. Originally, I was a little lost because you were kind of naming off all these sort of arbitrary concepts. But what you're saying is that these things sort of predate the human experience, that they're sort of constants and universal attributes of the nature of being, of experience itself, and they're antecedent to life forms. You're saying that they're
or I should go ahead and say they precede realization of these things. Like, you can have a screwdriver, you can make one, you can materialize it using atoms and things like that, and you can make them in a variety of ways. But the actual concept of a screwdriver that screws, that does screwing, that concept. In fact, a lot of times I think of it in terms of, I'm not sure if you're familiar with fuzzy logic, or it's kind of like a probability cloud. So, if you tried to imagine what the concept of a screwdriver is, this is just kind of an analogy to explain it to someone who has no idea what I'm talking about. There's the fuzzy cloud probability of what a screwdriver is. So it's not a specific screwdriver with a yellow handle or a long neck or anything like that. Or same thing with a shovel. There's a variety of ways to actually make one, but I'm just talking about the concept of a shovel that can dig a hole. That is something that just transcends and is independent of evolution or a Big Bang. Like, even if somehow the Big Bang was true and somehow you could precede that, the concept, there's never put it this way, there's never a time or a state of the universe where the concept of a shovel did not exist. I promise there are other planets out there where they have shovels and forks and pencils and even airplanes. So there seems to be this eternal tapestry of conceptual meaning embedded in the universe. And it's a very complex, ornate tapestry too. And it's both very beautiful and, in places, and in other places it can be very ugly.
I think I follow you. I think what you're saying, if we could try and maybe simplify it a bit, is that, like, everywhere throughout the galaxies, in the universe, there are ubiquitous actions and activities that are sort of indicative of this physical universe. That the way that matter and energy has coalesced and configured into all these shapes and forms, that the way carbon-based life forms operate, essentially, the way they function, that these certain functionality, like functional modes, are universal, like throughout. And what you're saying is that this is not something that could just randomly, sporadically come about, because there is like function and sort of
and purpose,
utilitarian. I was going to say utilitarian purpose behind it. Yeah.
Yes, there's order. It's not just a serendipitous thing or a fortuitous thing or due to probability. In fact, I don't even believe in true randomness or ultimate probability. It's probability as we humans use it, because we don't know all the tiny little forces and factors that cause a die to roll on 3 or 4. But things may look random and chaotic, but it's all a part of a higher order. I mean, even the perceived chaos is part, and I mean it is perfectly ordered. Actually, in my view, it is so ordered. In fact, if it wasn't, the whole thing wouldn't work. And the this overall tapestry that I was trying to express. If you wanted to know the synopsis of it, it's a yin-yang pattern. In fact, everything stems from this yin-yang pattern that is embedded everywhere in nature. You'll see it.
Polarities, like gender and polarities, and the light and dark sort of dichotomy that's there. But like forever, sort of forever causing contrast, but at the same time forever creating like a eternal equilibrium.
Yes. In fact, I've actually been working on illustrating my version of that pattern, kind of a very simplified one, just to communicate the idea which I hope to one day incorporate into that huge painting I told you about.
I wanted to get into this, guys, because actually, you're not really doing yourself justice here. You're actually a multi-talented guy. You're an artist. You're a musician. You're a YouTube, content creator. You make YouTube videos. You have a website, and you've been sort of exploring and sharing your these enlightened ideas with the world for a long time. So why don't you get into like all of your sort of artistic creative expressions and how you have how you've attempted to communicate your pantheistic
actually years ago, when I used to do a lot more art, a lot of oil paintings and stuff, I used to do a little more I remember even some CGI a little bit, but I would try to incorporate a lot of my philosophical views into my artwork. In fact, I do it also in my writing, like, my creative writing. I did a retelling of a voyage from the Earth to the Moon. It's that classic. I don't know if you remember, but
Sure.
the old black and white footage where you see the spaceship land into the eye of the moon.
Yeah. It's like it was like the first film ever made.
Yeah, the first sci-fi movie by George Méliès, and I did a retelling of that, like a short little novel of that, and embedded all through that book. And I didn't originally plan this, but as I was writing it and retelling it, I kept inserting a lot of my philosophical views, among the characters. There's certain characters have, philosophical exchanges on the ship on the way to the moon. And so just every time I notice I've been doing this, every time I get a chance, I will embed my, pantheistic philosophical views and even my political views into my artwork and into my writing. So
that's what we do, man. That's as artists, that's what we do. We communicate and we speak through our, through our art. That's what we're doing.
In fact, one of the things I'm anxious to get back to is, that huge painting that I had told you about, which I call the Final Epiphany or the Great Epiphany. I'm not yet sure what I'm going to call it, but and I kind of briefly told you in the past what it's about, but it's going to kind of show that tapestry that, the certain, kind of a synopsis of all of reality. And it's supposed to show how I am the summation of the universe, because all these elements come together to create me. From my point of view, I am at the apex. I'm at the summit of this allness. And everybody can say this, everybody can look and realize that they are the summation of the universe, that it requires the whole package, the whole thing, in order for one little thing to exist, even one little tiny atom. In order for that to be possible, the entire story, the entire package of it all has to exist. So nothing can be independent of the rest of that tapestry that is purposeful, that is ordered, and that is already in existence. Sometimes I hate to use the word design because that almost implies a designer. So a lot of times I'll use the word pattern or tapestry. So it's this tapestry that has always existed and it always will. In fact, I should also bring up that it couldn't have been any other way. For example, there's no room for a designer to choose to say, well, I'm going to make 1 + 2 = 33, or I'm going to make it to where humans can be made strictly of water and only water. So there are the reason why the rules are the way they are, and all the laws, all the physical laws and even non-physical laws, like the laws of love, whatever. That all has to be the way it is. The way a triangle has to have 3 corners, 3 angles and 3 sides. So the universe, from our point of view, has to unfold in exactly the way that it does. And it could have never been otherwise, and it could have never been designed otherwise.
So, it sounds like it's like a level of almost cosmic determinism, so to speak. Many of us, the guys I do the podcast with, we don't believe in free will per se. We know that all human beings have choices, but essentially, like we are a product of our environment, of all of the amalgamation of all of our experiences, and essentially, there's no thought or action or activity that we could do that isn't first sort of stimulated or motivated but from some prior cause, from some, a causal chain of events going all the way back to the Big Bang. And I think some of what you're saying is that it's not so much that there is a detached sort of transcendent creator deity that's pulling the strings and calling the shots. We are seeing like the unfolding or the manifesting of the very nature of the universe itself. Like this is just what it is. Like it's not doing anything. It's just being exactly what it is. It's just indicative of its own nature. If that's what I think that's what.
In fact, there's all these little things that I notice, like because of that tapestry. Of course, things are bad for us in the long run. Things that are things that we perceive as bad for us in the long run are usually pleasurable at first. Like sugar. And of course, things that are, that we perceive as good for us in the long term usually are not pleasurable or taste bad. Like food that's good for you.
Yeah, you're actually getting into some delayed gratification. What is the basis for morality and ethical behavior? It's actually delayed gratification. it's putting aside what you want right now and waiting for a little while and trusting that you're viewing things more in a holistic sense instead of being so myopic and the me gimme I gotta have mine right now. It's more of a mature point of view. Sure.
Yes. I've written about that very topic before, and I use the term that the universe, from the perceiver's point of view, is elastic in that sense. So those certain returns, you sometimes have to be patient and wait for that return. But usually the universe is very good at balancing itself out. But it's elastic. So you might not see your preferred state of balance right away. Even though, in truth, the universe as a whole always remains balanced and conserved. It's just that from the human's point of view, yes, there are not only delayed rewards, but there are also delayed punishments, because you can have someone who commits a crime and he may not get punished until 20 years later. Even if it's not by the laws of man, it may take him 20 years to feel guilty about it and to be punished psychologically and emotionally. But sooner or later, the universe loves to find equilibrium. And in fact, I've heard you talk about balance too.
Sure, I do. Yeah, I was going to say I have a whole article that's dedicated to this. It's called The Ultimate Questions, and it explores the concept of reward and punishment, and do we really reap what we sow, and the consequences of our actions, and I was going to say earlier, you had mentioned how nothing is really random, nothing is really by chance, and I was just going to make the point that of course, from our perspective, it seems like things are random and that there's things happening because they're not going according to our plans. It's like things will come up and it's like, why did that happen? That, it's just bad luck or whatever. But really everything is a causal chain of events. And it's just because we have our own agenda, we have our own ambitions and things get in the way of that or things sort of impede the progress that we're trying to make in our own personal, desires in our lives. And that's why it seems like there's this chaos, but really I do believe on some, it's hard. It's hard for me to accept this because there is so much pain and suffering and there's so much atrocity and just horror that has gone on, historically on this planet and even currently everywhere around the world. So it's difficult to embrace that. But as pantheists, we embrace the all. We see both sides, the yin and the yang. Yeah, we have to accept, that there's kindness and cruelty in nature, and it's both. So we view it holistically.
I actually believe that in the course of human events and in the unfolding of the story of what's going on this planet, that we are currently at, if you think of it as a seesaw, we have been basically pulling ourselves out of the mud and the pain and the torture of the whole, of just, everything starts out topsy-turvy. Everything starts out upside down and backwards. And mankind has slowly but surely, through blood and pain and suffering, is finally coming to this point where they're finding this equilibrium. So if you imagine a seesaw, I really, truly believe we are about to hit that point where we are about to find that equilibrium in all sorts of ways. And so I am actually very confident and not worried at all. The only thing that, in my opinion, that would prevent it is if an asteroid hit or something. But, because
sure, yeah, there's these extinction events that can happen.
Yeah, there are these. You never know 100%. The universe will never let us know 100% what the outcome is about to be. But
Richard Feynman says, nature's imagination is so much greater than man. She's never going to let us relax.
But to get back to what I was saying, I've noticed, there's all these little things in the tapestry that have, of course they have to be that way. Like, of course, children almost always prefer to eat their dessert before their vegetables when they're young. And of course, boys and girls on average will hate each other at a very young age and then experience a 180-degree turn in their teens and become totally infatuated with one another. And of course, it was always meant to be that there would be racial struggles between blacks and whites all throughout history. And of course, grass grows just long enough that we have to cut it at least once a week in the spring. And of course, we all have to have buttholes that stink. If we didn't, the whole thing wouldn't work and never would have worked. So it's all a part of a purposeful plan. And my point was, though, that I'm getting to where I get it. I get why things have to be the way they are, the way things are unfolding, the way they have to unfold. And it's all an expression. It all springs from that yin and yang principle. I noticed that is the essence in everything. That's why. In fact, if you take anything in nature, if you take me, if you take the planet, that is really just a complex version of yin and yang. It's like if you put yin and yang in a blender and blended it into this really complex sculpture, because it's always trying to preserve that balance and that yin-yangness. That's why when we get sick, violently ill, our bodies want to try to heal itself. And why the iris tries to close when the light is too bright.
There's no question that nature desires homeostasis. It desires a level of equilibrium with itself. It's seeking balance at all times. But at the same time, in order to experience anything, and I say this all the time, maybe this is what you've heard, is that in order to experience anything, that contrast is necessary. There must be contrast. You can't have up without down. You can't have light without dark. You can't have hot without cold. And so there needs to be that sort of juxtaposed forces, and we see this played out literally on a subatomic level when you have antimatter, matter and antimatter, and then matter won out at the beginning of the universe, and you see it happening right now. The most powerful forces in existence, far beyond anything we observe, is dark energy and dark matter, where dark energy is essentially ripping the universe apart, and dark matter is holding it together, like simultaneously. Go ahead. Let's see what we were talking. Oh, the yin and the yang. There was a point that I was wanting to make, but now I lost track. Let's see. What were you just now? Sorry, just talking about contrast and how.
Yeah. That it was very important. I've written a lot about the whole balance thing, and one of my favorite things to tell someone that really helps them to get it is a door has to be closed before it can be opened. And a person has to be hungry before they can be filled or enjoy the pleasure of being filled. So just as, to your point, as you were saying, and I totally agree with it, and I've written a lot about it.
You can't experience anything unless you can experience some of its opposite. And that doesn't mean that we're saying there needs to always be pain and suffering and this incredible disparity between those who suffer and those who are experiencing pleasure. But it means that in order to learn, in order to actually have the experience and appreciate it, there just has to be some form of contrast. Like the same thing continuously for eternity is no experience at all, and there's no knowledge that's gained by it. So there needs to be those sort of differentials involved there. Yeah,
we have to have winter in order to appreciate the summers. And I, if we went too long, like let's say we went decade after decade and we were somehow in eternal bliss, where we had all our needs met and it was just everybody was grinning and really, in fact, that'd be actually kind of creepy. But, that we would eventually, for some reason, that cannot sustain itself entirely. So if you ever created the perfect community, the perfect society, we would have to put in mechanisms that would at least allow us to gently undulate up and down between pain and pleasure.
There needs to be a challenge, a little bit of a challenge. There needs to always be something to achieve some some goal to reach. There's got to be progress. Yeah, there's got to be a bit of resistance, and you can't. I mean, this applies to everything. You can't. How does a bodybuilder work out? They have to continuously break down the muscle tissue and rebuild it, and there's got to be that resistance. So what we're really talking about is resistance, not so much evil, not so much like the negative forces. It's just there needs to be resistance in order for its opposite to move forward. So there's flux. And I was going to mention earlier that in the principles of Hermeticism, I believe the 7 or 8 principles of Hermeticism, 2 of those are gender and polarity. And if you look those up, I mean that's the nature of existence right there. Everything can be boiled down to that everything contains a light and a dark aspect, and everything contains like a male and a female aspect. And you see that in the hexagram. That's the original origin of the hexagram of the Jewish Star of David, the Magen David. It represented the male and female energy principles, and also represents fire and water and air and earth. And there's a lot of alchemical symbolism and stuff in there. You know me, I'm obsessed with symbols. So I've grown to really have an appreciation for certain symbols, especially the ones that I really do find to be meaningful. And to your point a while ago, the tree that withstands and survives some of the strongest storms is usually the trees that have the stronger cores. They're the better. It's better for their health, and I actually think it's healthy for our body and mind to experience some displeasure, some discomfort and pain. So we need to experience a little winter, or not having our favorite food or what have you. So we can always, pain is it's an alarm system by our bodies to warn us of danger or threat. It's a function. There's a utilitarian function behind it. So we don't want to get rid of our pain entirely. Of course, we need there's forms of sedation and anesthesia, and we should work on that on helping to minimize the extreme experiences of pain, and we've done that. But it's a warning system, man, and it's there for a reason. I absolutely agree.
And by the way, talking about this tapestry that's eternal. This is not to say that I don't believe in evolution, because I do, but only as a sub-process to a larger static system that has always been in place and always will, and which set the stage for it as something we perceivers are forced to experience due to our limited point of view, which allows us to learn about it and to understand it. We have to experience this allness in an expanded, differentiated version of itself. I mean, we can't always... like if it was all perceived as this total seamless oneness, we would not be able to have those experiences. We wouldn't be able to actually experience the story of the universe and the story of man unless we were limited, unless we did see the universe in this differentiated form of itself or version of itself.
You're getting to the whole purpose of existence in the pantheistic model. Absolutely. This, everything you're saying. I mean, it's so fascinating to hear another person sort of speak my language. I mean, you're saying the things that I know on a deeply intuitive spiritual level that I understand. You're using your words, and so it's very interesting to hear it.
I've actually when I was listening to you in your podcast, you kept impressing me on certain things that you would say that I've talked to enough people, even enough pantheists, to know that certain knowledge that you have is actually very rare and very meaningful. And in fact, some of it I was just like, damn, where does he get off knowing that? Because that was, some pretty profound.
I sense a little jealousy there, guys. a little bit of.
No, not jealousy. It's, I'm impressed because I know what it took for me to come to that same conclusion, and it's a rare pleasure to come across someone who gets it. And I know there are certain things that I could say to you and not have to feel like I have to exhaust myself explaining it. My younger brother is the same way. We've influenced each other so much now, and it's a brotherhood that we have. Like, I can say certain things, and he gets me right away.
It's great, man. It's a commonality.
Yeah, so,
there's a level of solidarity and fellowship that's there, and that's exactly what I'm trying to cultivate and institute is an organized movement. Where there's a fellowship of philosophers and sort of those who have chosen this path of understanding in a naturalistic way the deep mysteries and complexities of the universe.
I actually feel sorry for you sometimes because I'll hear you either in written comments or in podcasts trying to explain these certain concepts to people, and a lot of times it falls on deaf ears, and which is unfortunate. But we have to keep trying, though, right? I mean, we have to.
Absolutely. And I do want to take, I do want to take this opportunity, guys, to thank you just for over the years, the many times that you've come to my aid where I was just I was in some incredibly just bogged down and alone in some debate and then just getting tag teamed and I'm just standing my ground and I'll tag you and then I don't know where you are, I haven't spoken to you in months, and then you'll just show up and you'll like leave like this enormous comment rebuttal and pretty much like it's like it just helps me. It just restores my
I'll see things like I'll see certain discussions that you get involved in, and it drives my passion because I sometimes I do this to a fault where I strongly believe that I see the solution to the argument, or I feel that I could smooth the argument over, and I am actually compelled to, and that's why sometimes you see such long responses. In fact, I see you do the same thing because you're very passionate about these things, and you burn that midnight oil, writing these expressions, these artful expressions to people. But yeah, that's what we do. That we're compelled to do that, and that's part of our purpose. That's I've accepted that that's my role in life. To sometimes it rubs people the wrong way. Sometimes I say too much. But I don't know. I try to gauge it. It's a hit and miss kind of a game. I try to put in my input. Sometimes I keep quiet and I just remain the observer. But if I have time, I get to where if I see something, I cannot resist. I have to put in my 2 cents. I'm just really compelled to do it.
You've always been there for me, man, and I just wanted to thank you for that. Wherever this goes. Thanks for being there. There's never been a time where I haven't called on you that you haven't, come to my aid and
tried to be there
and back me up. And I do appreciate that. We definitely need to, we need to cultivate this, man. Like we need to encourage more of it, this fellowship with Pantheists, because we're still a minority. There's a couple things I want to say, really quick, just so I don't forget, because we're talking about so many important issues here. I do want to get into at some point your personal experience, because we're really talking about the intellectual, sort of metaphysical, like the ideology and the concepts and the themes. But I'd like to sort of ask you, from one pantheist to another, could you possibly talk a little bit about your own kind of communal experience with the divine? Like what is it you do to help just to get in touch with nature, and where is it that you feel the presence of we could speak, I'd say God, the omnia. Like what do you do in terms of ritual or communion, and what's your actual experience as a pantheist in your relationship to the universe, so to speak? Can you talk
I almost hesitate to mention this one aspect, but I'll go ahead and do it anyway. I used to smoke a lot of marijuana, the way most people breathe oxygen. And so I do believe that had a profound influence. I don't want to claim that had the only influence, but it definitely had a profound influence. And I've also mentioned this in a video where another very important ingredient that led me to where I am now was the fact that I had a lot of solitude. My parents moved our family out to a small town, and I had a lot of. So I used to be very social, actually, when I was younger. I mean, extremely social, so much so that I was glad to have some me time, to be alone. In fact, I now look back on it and realize that I've always been an introverted person and sort of kind of went against my own true nature. But I now love being an introverted, introspective person that has a lot of me time. And so
this is a common thing. This is a common thing among pantheists that we have a good amount of time of of isolation, and whether we enjoy it or not. Like sometimes we're like for myself, we're forced into it.
I always thought of it as my time in the wilderness. So I mean, I hate to use a Abrahamic expression there, but that was I get that. That was my time to really contemplate the universe. And here's what's sad is that a lot of people, most people, will not have that luxury. They will not have that. In fact, it's worth gold to me that time that I had, because they're so busy in the jobs, children, wife, all that, and so they will never can afford the time to even think about the universe, to think about politics, to think about humanity. They just don't have time. In fact, that's one of the reasons that drove me to want to create the group that I did, the United Citizens of the World, because I see how everybody is just stretched to the limits, and nobody has an opportunity to have to spend valuable time with their children, with their wives or spouse, and they don't have time to sit around and think about these things. Now, some people, just because by nature they're naturally have a natural disposition of being extroverted people, they're very physical. They don't care to sit around and think about the universe. But there's still a lot of people that do. And I think that if people had more time and weren't so stressed out, that everything would improve in many ways.
This is why in Biopan, I mean, we highly promote and support the Venus Project and the Zeitgeist movement. This push toward a resource-based economy where we can free people up from doing these mundane jobs that they hate, that actually have no holistic benefit in society.
Well, I wonder about that. It's been a while since I've familiarized myself with the Venus Project, but I've kind of discussed this with you briefly. I've always felt that we do need to be a little careful in this area, because I think there's something to be said for allowing children, for example, to go out into the fields and to throw seeds and to water the crops, and for us to try to find ways of using, for example, to do things that don't require electricity, and to don't use an electric toothbrush, use your damn arm, to do things for ourselves in a more organic, simplistic way.
Yeah, you're talking about sort of the over reliance upon technology and how it's separated, disconnected us from nature
right. But I'm not against a balanced use of technology. Right. So I don't, anybody listening, please don't think I'm against technology, because I think technology has its place and has its value. It's just, me, I'm always talking about balance and everything. If we can just find that proper balance between allowing us to do things for ourselves and then also using technology when it's appropriate.
That's actually what an RBE represents. It's really just, it's free. It's providing people access to all of the necessary resources so they are freed up to focus on the things that they actually enjoy and the things that they're passionate about, and they'll be motivated to pursue art and poetry and music and actually work on the solutions to the problems that we have, because it's just taking so long for the human race to evolve, because we're locked into these very oppressive systems that sort of perpetuate structural violence and keep people distracted, or they keep people stressed out, as you mentioned earlier. They're continuously overwhelmed with responsibilities and financial burdens, and so it's a way of getting us back to our true selves, our true nature, of living sort of in sync with the earth, and being able to to move and flow with the ebb and flow of life and the seasons, and really embrace our animal nature, and get grounded and get back in touch with the earth. And in many facets, many people are doing this already. There's so many movements that are sort of biocentric and earth-based and naturalistic forms of spirituality and philosophies that have arisen that are entirely predicated on the idea of just turn off your phone, like get off the computer and actually go out and get your hands dirty, and like learn to start growing your own food and foraging, and the whole sustainability movement and this idea of living off grid is is completely based on that, the idea of just an attunement with the natural cycles, and it's a form of sustainability that works in a practical sense, but it also becomes a kind of spirituality, and many pagans and Wiccans and some of the New Age movement are embracing this, and we've gotten so far away from our real sort of fundamental connections with
right now we're very out of balance, and one of those eternal forms or eternal concepts I was relating to, one of those is the universe is very ironic, and one of those ironies that happen to be eternal is that the wrong people, the shallow, dishonest ones, are usually the ones at the top in power. And those who have a conscience, those who have a heart, those who are usually wiser, are usually at the either in the middle or at the bottom.
They're marginalized. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I get why the crocodiles are at the top. I see how that was always meant to be at first, but I also see how that will eventually be tempered or more balanced. It'll always be that way to some extent. That force the force of the extroverted ones who basically have the nerve to be corrupt and to have the courage of a thief. Those kind of people are always the ones that have a lot of upward mobility. They're the types that become politicians. They're the types that become
whether they have a good character and good value system or not, right? They say fortune favors the bold, is what you're saying.
Right. Exactly. That was a very good way to put it. And it's very sad, nice guys finish last kind of a thing. Right. But I do see again that equilibrium coming back in, because now the sort of like the sheep, the lamb, the deer, the antelope type people are finally becoming a little more aggressive. Also the Democrats, they're becoming more aggressive, and they're starting to finally fight, step up to the plate a little more than they used to. Even myself, I'm guilty of it myself, because I'm such a shy, introverted person that doesn't want to stir the pot or, stir the shitstorm or anything. Yeah. But the more of us bleeding hearts or kind-hearted people make an effort to get out of our comfort zone and to make a difference. And how you make a difference is you actually have to threaten the crocodiles. You have to bring them down, because that's the mechanism that's gonna put everything into balance. And they're not going to like it. They're not going to want this balance. They're not going to prefer it. They like this.
There's two things. I don't want to quote from Jesus, but I will. But the meek will not inherit the earth. It really is the strong who survive. And somewhere else he says, those who are good with. I'll butcher it if I try to remember. But this is my paraphrase. Those who are good with money or whatever are shrewd. It's not those who are kind-hearted that do well in business. It's the shrewd. It's the ones that are ambitious.
Yeah, it's the sharks.
Yeah. But he also says, be wise as serpents, but innocent as doves.
Yeah. Yeah, there's actually a lot of things that the man Jesus said. I think he was a good spiritual leader, but I don't view him as anything more than a man. I find him to be a great spiritual leader and a great philosopher for his time. I don't agree with a lot of what he said, but like do unto others as you would have them do unto you, and don't cast your pearls before swine, and all those kind of things. There's and love your enemy. Great. I mean, I can't even believe someone that long ago understood that truth, that truism.
We won't get into that because I'm a mythicist, so I don't believe he ever existed. But these parables and these teachings actually come from Eastern traditions, and they're from much older. Actually, a lot of it is from Buddha, from Buddhist teachings.
Yeah,
but we won't debate that. But I do agree that there are many pearls of truth in there, mixed in with a lot of garbage as well.
Yeah, whether or not that actual man, he reportedly said these things. So whether or not he actually said all those things, I would be in complete agreement with you on that. That he kind of represents a symbol of those things that were said. But
it was a reformation of Judaism essentially, and with the influence of the Greco-Roman, the Greeks, the Stoics. It was actually the Stoic philosophers that influenced the character of this Messiah, and many of his teachings can be drawn from Greek and philosophy.
Yeah, in fact, I learned a little bit about how past histories, past cultures did feed into that myth story. And there's evidence that he did not say all those things, or that he and that the whole beginning of his life story is all fabricated.
There were many. Trust me, dude. This is something I've spent an inordinate amount of time on. There, just many currents that fed the Jesus myth, and his life was just an amalgamation of all these different characters, and so there are kernels of truth scattered throughout, and then actually it's a very fascinating sort of symbolic personification of a lot of natural processes and astrotheology, and when you start to look at it from the mythicist position, it actually becomes much more interesting than the literalization of it and projecting this fictional story back into history. But like I said, we don't have to get into that. But I want you to talk a little bit about the organization or the movement that you're trying to institute.
We might need to save that for a whole other podcast. But
can you just sort of briefly? I
do have a lot to say about that.
Give a synopsis, or let's just give a synopsis and maybe put out the information.
I can do that. This is something where I believe that if people could come together voluntarily. And it doesn't have to be a community. Ideally, it should be a community. But at first, if they could create any kind of organization or co-op or business, anything because there's power in numbers, and if the right people can come together, and if they can agree to at least a fundamental foundation of views, because I don't want to get complex philosophies or religion attached to it. Which is why I kind of created I forget how many at the moment. I think I may have created maybe 12 or 10 principles that are very fundamental, like, you shouldn't kill, or we should tolerate people of other races, and we should tolerate gender, other sexual preferences. We should try to be more tolerant of our differences. And that's one example or two examples.
Yeah, you and I and Peter Moriarty, we all actually rewrote the Ten Commandments in our own way. We updated and sort of like reformed and refined the Ten Commandments from a completely pantheistic sort of biocentric perspective. We each did that, and before we'd even met each other. And then I always thought it would be great to kind of compare.
Well, we have, and we saw how much of an overlap there.
Yeah. We're definitely drawing from the same source. I mean, this is
okay. There's what I was talking about. Yeah. The reason why that is because that's one of those eternal concepts that list. Those are eternal concepts or eternal truisms that will always hold true. You can go to another planet, and I promise you'll pretty much find those same principles that we three came up with. And now it'll be of course, expressed a little differently in their own language and in their own choice of words. But
relative to that particular life form and their culture, yeah, but there definitely that there will be like a universal ethic and principle there involved, because that's kind of a slippery slope. We don't want to say that ethics and morality and good and evil sort of exist in a cosmological sense, in a universal sense. It exists in terms of biological life, because since we have we all have these common needs, and in order to sort of coexist and survive, that there's a standard whereby we need to how we need to treat one another, and so that in that sense it will be universal, because the life forms are there's similarities and parallels there. So yeah, it'll be across the board, and I always want to be careful, make the distinction and say that nothing is ever really set in stone, that we can't literally have a 10 commandments that are going to last for all time, forever, for all the ages, because knowledge and wisdom are emergent, and ethics and morality is an emergent understanding. I mean, I had, when I wrote originally my my sort of the laws of nature, or the laws of the earth, I said it, nature's 10 commandments. I had in there, that we ought to respect and honor the life that we kill, that we ought to sort of pay homage to it and see how it was sacrificed for us. And then, becoming vegan, it's just completely made me rethink the whole thing and say, yeah, we should do that when we consume the vegetation, the plants, the fruits and vegetables, because there's absolutely no need for human beings in order to sustain ourselves to have to kill and slaughter animals. So it's sort of evolved from a kind of a Native American reverence and respect to the animal, to the idea of no, ahimsa. Let's do no harm as far as we are able. Let's just do no harm and just be thankful for the fruits and vegetation that can give us everything we need. So what I'm trying to say is, it's an evolving process. Our ethics and morality are always in a state of emergence. But definitely yours and Peter's and mine are just leaps and bounds above and beyond the original archaic, the Mosaic law that was presented in the Old Testament. Like what we have could essentially guide our culture into like an enlightened new age. And I'm not even like feeling sort of bad about saying that. It's not aggrandizing myself at all. Like we are coming from a much more awakened mindset than the Bronze Age shepherds and goat herders who wrote those original commandments. Go ahead.
By the way, I may have to do a podcast with you where you try to teach me more about veganism, because I actually have some questions, a list of questions that I would like to ask a vegan. I have another a online acquaintance that's kind of been teaching me about veganism. Her name is Angie Delay, and she's just off and on, tries, whenever we chat about health and things like that and the type of foods that we should eat. But there's still so much that I don't know.
Sure. I have no problems with that. Like, even we can do it now when we get off, when we get off the air or whatever. I have no problems with that whatsoever.
Well, we might
feel free to.
Yeah, if we ever do another podcast where I could ask you those questions, and it would be good for also other listeners who are in my.
Actually, guys, my next guest is going to be Clint, a friend of mine from Australia, and he's a pantheist and a vegan, and the entire episode is going to be dedicated to the idea of the convergence of veganism with pantheism, and how the two movements are
compatible.
It represents beyond compatible. It's literally one leads to the other. We see it as the natural progression of pantheistic thought, but not everyone agrees with us. Of course, but no one agrees on anything in pantheism, right? So, that's what the whole episode is going to be about. Is actually the connection between veganism and pantheism and how it all relates and stuff. So, you're welcome to join us on that, or we can talk before or after. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, when will that one take place?
I'm just trying to align our schedules, because he's 10 hours ahead or something. Oh. So it's difficult, but he's had some free time lately, and he's a very passionate guy.
Hopefully it will be in the later hours.
Yeah, we'll work it out, man. I'll now that I know that you're interested, I mean, we can definitely keep tabs and let you know.
And I may play devil's advocate a little bit because there are some tough questions I got for.
Oh, that's fine, brother. Like you have no idea what we go through on a daily basis with our.
There's some stuff that I really would like to work through on that.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, our activism, we deal with the worst of the worst, continuously getting insulted and just contesting ridiculous arguments like all the time. So I'm sure that whatever you have to say, we've probably heard before, and we're more than happy to elucidate your understanding when it comes to that.
All right. And I guess to briefly tie up what we were talking about a little earlier, you were asking about my pantheistic personal experience.
Oh yeah, the experience.
The one thing I did want to add is the one thing that was both gratifying and somewhat frustrating now that I look back on it is how I did not have access to the internet. So a lot of people of this newer generation, I'm extremely jealous of them because there's such a wealth of information on pantheism and even alternative views and on science and the cosmos and all this stuff. And now I did have back when I would watch the Discovery Channel and what was the other one? There's the Learning Channel, but sadly they all started doing reality TV stuff, and so that was kind of sad. But and I went to the library a lot, and so I had to read a lot and get these sources. But one of the frustrating things is I didn't have other people that. I suspected that there were. I remember discussing this with my brother on more than one occasion. I said, there's got to be others out there like us who view the world this way, because we were out in a small town. We were in a bubble. I'm telling you, we did not have others to validate or support what our thinking was. And there was a lot of stuff that I desperately wanted to share with others, but there was no vehicle for that. There was nothing. And so as soon as YouTube came out, man, I was like a horse ready to come out of the gate, a racehorse. I just wanted to express that.
You made some great videos, man. I still get choked up, man. That the Forever All. It's like I have that on my list of pantheist related videos, and it's up there like number 3 because it's powerful, man. I mean, it's just that you tied it in just right with the music and
that was very hard to do.
Really well done.
Yeah, that was very hard to do, by the way. Marrying all that, matching all that up. I spent, I think weeks on that. Trying to match that all up.
No, it's appreciated. I mean, it's a great work of art, and it's a great expression of this idea. Go ahead.
I've noticed that you have that same drive and that same passion, and you're like a rocket, rocking on ready, and you just want to explain all this to everybody. You're like you're ready to explode, And I see that same passion. Try to imagine having that level of passion back in 1993 when there basically wasn't the internet, and you were out in the middle of nowhere, and you just wanted to explode and go knock on people's doors and explain to them what you thought was the worldview, the reality of it all.
And I did want to say that you'd mentioned it, and it's true. Most pantheists, they've been pantheists their whole lives, even if they were associated in a cultural sense. Because I was going to mention earlier, your parents are more like cultural Christians, as opposed to being sort of theologically.
Yes, they just did it because it was what was expected culturally, socially. And my mom, fortunately, she is very scientific minded. That's her degree is in science. And my dad,
you did a segment. You did a few videos just dedicated to your parents, right? Like how.
Well, yeah, there was a little segment there.
How your parents influenced you and stuff like that.
And my dad was into literature and philosophy, and between those two worlds, that was the yin and the yang for me. So I had a very balanced view growing up, which I'm eternally grateful for.
So there was a thing. Just basically, if you can give the audience just a little bit of a clue, because a lot of the stuff is very deep and heavy. I mean, most of my audience could understand, but for those new to the experience, I mean, we're not. okay, so there is no God, right? There's no supernatural world. There's no angels or demons. No heaven or hell. But what does exist, and what are we actually talking about here?
I don't view it as a God, of course, as the Abrahamic defined God, but I do believe. I tried to evaluate what the common denominator is among all spiritual disciplines, all religions, and all definitions of God. And I've told you this before, I think a while back, one of the most common themes that we can all agree on, and that is God is that which is the constant causation of your existence. God is that which is responsible for you and the existence of the world. But I'm careful not to say God is the creator. Now, a lot of people would, though. See, a lot of people would define the term God as the creator. And so I don't believe in ultimate creation. I just believe in creation that, we perceivers experience evolution, and we experience things being created or materialized. But to me, the totality of it has always existed. And you mentioned,
let's put it this way. Here's a word, aseity. Aseity is the term that theologians use to describe sort of the self-existence, that nothing created God. There's nothing outside of God. God is just a self-contained sort of it's always been and always will be, and it made itself. It didn't even make itself. It's just always been. And
right.
The idea that it's a perpetual. It's a thing that just exists, that just is. That I am, that I am. And so aseity is the word for that. And I wanted to say that, I agree with you that there, our physical universe may have had a point of beginning where the laws of physics came into existence 13.8 billion years ago, but. You got to really, I want you to grok this, Guyus. Like, what we're talking about is not a creation event. We're talking about the various evolutionary stages of a cosmic being, of a gigantic, incomprehensibly vast organism that is just transforming and transitioning from one form to another, and is learning and growing and developing. And so it's not that there was ever really a beginning. There's just a point in time where this particular manifestation, where this universe, this particular configuration of all energy matter came to be. But that does not mean that it actually had a beginning. We're just talking about like this is what God is now, and God will be something else later, and then later it will be something else. And so it's not like the universe itself, nature is continuously sort of manifesting aspects of itself, but itself, the true sort of core foundation, the eternal ground of being, as they would say in perennial philosophy, has always existed, always will, and always shall be. And so we're observing and experiencing just various aspects of this one monistic unity.
I've expressed this to you before, that I view the universe like an epic cosmic conveyor belt, where from the perceiver's point of view, whereby portions of the physical world are always being created or constructed, while other parts are always being destroyed or deconstructed. But overall, the whole universe remains fixed. It's like an infinite reel of film where every possible frame is already in place, but we perceivers serve as the sort of like the projector that the film moves through. We're like the conduits that get to experience the very meaningful story of the universe and its unfolding.
In a sense, we're trapped in linear time, so we can never perceive really the end from the beginning, where it's completely subjective and limited. But at the same time, that's kind of the beauty of it, because that's what it wants to do. Like Omnia wants to be subjective. It wants to experience itself in all these various manifestations, so that it can learn, what it is, because it really is like a child learning and exploring. Yes. And through us, at this point, we've learned now what morality is, and ethics, and what goodness is, and what evil and hatred is, and how how we should conduct ourselves and what we desire and what's fulfilling, in order to peacefully coexist and thrive and flourish. And
I've also compared it, in the past to an eternal flame. If you imagine that, processes are going on, elements are coming in, they dance about, they exit, but the flame always remains a flame, and its fuel never runs out. It's like this eternal flame. So if you can imagine like this eternal.
I was going to say real quick, the Unitarian Universalists, that's actually their symbol. There's it's a flame, it's an ever burning flame, kind of like they do in the Olympics.
You'll have to see I did an art piece. I'll have to show it to you. It's this candle that curves in on itself like the toroidal shape. And in fact, I'm surprised I haven't shown it to you by now. But it's an eternal candle, which kind of and again, I'm expressing my philosophical views in my artwork. So that was kind of a thing that I did there.
Well, you can see my icon right there is the tree of life. You have the branches that are expanding outward, and the roots that are reaching out in fractal form, and then they interconnect, and it's just one cyclical model. That's if you could draw a picture of God, essentially, in terms of if it's energetic movement, the pattern. That's what Omnia is doing. Omnia is reaching out and exploring and transitioning and evolving, and then folding back in on itself, and you have the big bang and the big crunch cycle there. That like everything's in transition. It's just a transformation process.
By the way, when I was listening to yours and Chandler's podcast, where you discussed the importance of the torus shape and how it can be found all throughout nature, in fruits, seeds, solar systems. That was one of those examples, one of those moments where I was really impressed with your understanding of that in particular, because and its importance and its value. And I've been meaning to discuss my personal discovery of that meaningful toroidal shape, the vortices motion, and the function we find virtually everywhere in nature, including at the atomic level. I had discovered it again in that bubble shortly after I had graduated high school. And so this was again back in like 1993, and this was way before the internet. So I had to discover that in that not in a vacuum. I had source material, but so you can imagine my surprise when I learned only a few years ago that others had also discovered this meaningful shape and function of the torus, and basically considered it to be a sacred shape. My younger brother and I thought that was our own private secret knowledge, and I guess in many ways back then, when hardly anyone knew about it or discussed it, it was. But when I learned literally only a few years ago that others knew about it and considered it to be very meaningful and somehow special, it reminded me of that movie Close Encounters, where several select individuals around the world were sculpting or painting some mysterious mountainous rock formation.
Downloaded their minds.
And then they were playing this. Yeah. Yes, they were playing this. They also tapped into this particular melody that they thought it was coming. Yeah, they thought they were coming up with it on their own, but they had all discovered these ideas independently. But at the same time, it was an inevitable discovery for them. And again, if you remember that
concept, that's what we're doing. In a sense, we're all there's this this coalescing of all these similar minds, that are. We do have a vision. We do have a form, a pattern that we see, in nature, and in terms of our perception, our perspective on the cosmos, and it's all coming together. And we express it in different ways. We use different language. We use different mediums and art forms, but it's all ubiquitous. Absolutely.
I was actually totally blown away when I literally. I started seeing people bring up that shape. In fact, I still have yet to investigate why they. I can make some assertions of why they came to realize, or why it's meaningful to them. You see it everywhere in nature. But it was a very profound thing for me. In fact, I used that symbol. In fact, I've drawn about 1,000 sketches and paintings.
I think in the eye, right? It's a picture of a little man in an eye, and then it has that.
Well,
that sort of life
yeah. If you remember, that's an example, a small example of that huge painting that I hope to finish. Go back to one day. Right. And what that is that incorporates the torus shape a great deal. It's like a torus within a torus within a torus. And I thought I totally had the monopoly on that shape. I thought, man, no one's in miles of this, and I would actually like to find out what the history, who first started, raising that point, that's a very meaningful.
There is the as above, so below, in Hermeticism and sort of in occult circles. There's that concept. The unicursal hexagram represents that as well. And then, of course, the tree of life in Celtic and Gaelic.
It's even in fission reactors. Like if you look at fission reactors and things that science is doing, and if you look at the electromagnetic.
No. I mean, let's get this straight right now. This is an aspect of biopan ontology that is almost fundamental. That people they can't grok it, but when they do, they can't not see it. Once they understand that what we're talking about is not necessarily a physical shape. I mean, the shape, the visual representation of it that we see sort of manifested in the tree of life, or in that donut shape, that like basically you have the electromagnetic field of the earth, or the electromagnetic field around a human, or the shape of any fruit or vegetable. You can slice it in half and see this. I mean, every single form of vegetation or plant life or organism, biological organism, exhibits this pattern. Actually, the pattern is the energetic basis for its own form. So the forms are really reflections of the actual model itself. And what you have is exactly what you were talking about. You have 2 points of polarity. Okay, you have a head and a tail, and you have a center. I mean, I guess we could relate it to like the tree. That's the easiest model for people to envision.
Yeah, in fact, in my original painting, I was actually in front of or part of a tree, and like your symbol, the branches came and fused in with the roots. In fact, when I first saw that image,
the tree is a very powerful ancient symbol that it communicates. That is the symbol of biopan is the tree of life.
Specifically, the symbol that you use where the branches actually fuse into the roots. When I first saw that some years ago, not on your thing, but I had seen it somewhere else. When I first saw that, I have to admit I was a little disgruntled, because that was one of the main aspects of my painting, because you're going to see this tree and all these branches reaching out and then coming.
You're just a branch yourself, Guyus. You're just a branch, man. You're not the you're not the whole tree. Remember, you're just a branch yourself. Don't be disgruntled. Don't be jealous, man. Like we're all we're all tuned in. Like we're all mediums for this truth.
Well, I was disappointed because we all want that opportunity to announce an idea, or to get a little what like look, it's like a little kid when they do a cartwheel for their parents, like, look at me.
Oh, you want your recognition, of course, man. Of course, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, and you represent that. You represent something very strong, very powerful, and in your own unique way. You are a unique expression of Omnia that is communicating the most valuable truths. And you're gonna do it in your own way. You're gonna do it in a multifaceted way. I mean, you do it through your music, through your videos, through your artwork, and through your writing. And think about that, dude. I mean, how many people can put that on their resume, that they're an author, they're a musician, they're an artist, and they're a YouTube creator and a blogger, and you've got all that.
I try to keep. I always try to keep my ego in check. In fact, anybody who knows me, would say that they know that I wouldn't be the first to push my way in front of the line, but I think it's healthy to have some ego. Ego is one of the things that helps us want to get up in the morning and climb that metaphoric mountain. But
I'm not the one that says we should demolish our ego. I don't buy into that. Like I think our desires and our ego, it's who we are. I don't necessarily agree. I don't think it's a bad thing.
As long as we keep it in check, as long as we keep it once again that balance. But when I first saw that symbol, I was like, shit, because I was like, I couldn't believe it. I was like, God, somebody beat me to it. But I've
had the same experience. Every time I see. When I watch a YouTube video or I see someone expressing pantheistic thought that I've been, well, damn, I mean, if you want to talk about like that, like every stage along the way, that when I was learning about Christianity, the origins of religions, and I studied comparative mythology, and every time I wrote a book, I would the next day, I mean, this is after doing months and months and months of research and just completely devoting myself to it. I go to the bookstore, go to Barnes and Noble, and then there's Ellen Pagels has, The Origins of Satan. Like she already wrote a book exactly, covering the same topics. And I'm like, well, great. If I had just read this, or if I just watched this YouTube video, or just, this happens every time. Actually, I'll do all the hard work. And then the next day I find a documentary that completely embodies in a comprehensive way everything that I just spent like months trying to get to the bottom to and compile on my own. But then again, there you go. It's the experience of it. I wouldn't feel so strongly about it, and I probably wouldn't be as invested in it had I not had to do the labor intensive work myself. If I wasn't assiduously pursuing these things, then it would probably not be as important, and I wouldn't try to promote it as much. So I don't know. It's frustrating, but then at the same time, it's like you said, you're recognizing there is this pattern. There's this universal pattern of everyone sort of in their own way coming to terms with the truth of the universe, and we're evolving beyond. We're letting go of these old paradigms and transitioning into this greater understanding. And there was at one point, I think you said something about the time periods or the eras that we're living in. And we are in the Kali Yuga, according to Hindu traditions, which is like the worst of the worst, where everything just pretty much falls apart and goes to shit. But then after that, we transition to the Golden Age. And according to other sources, we're actually entering the Age of Aquarius. So it's definitely like a time of transition and upheaval and turmoil. But I mean, as with like the Y2K or the 2012 phenomenon, it's like everybody gets so hyped up, and it's like, is there really a shift, a cosmic change? We're aligning with the center, or do we just create it, or is it just like a psychosomatic creation based on our focus and our intention, so that we end up actually creating that shift because everyone believes in it? So it's interesting.
What I noticed is that I believe a shift is happening. But it goes to the law of compensation. There are certain things that were really bad the further back you go into history that we don't have to deal with now. I mean, just really cruel, painful, torturous events. But we lost, as things shifted. The law of compensation, which states that for every loss there's a gain, and for every gain there's a loss. Right. So it's right. So as we shift, and we have improved in certain ways, but as a result, we have lost things, and we have gotten worse in other areas. So it's that compensation thing. But I still believe the pendulum. At first it was violently shifting back and forth, even though it was constantly being experiencing that compensation thing. For every gain there's a loss, for every loss there's a gain. But now we're getting to a more comfortable undulation, and finding that equilibrium. Like
the seesaw, it was violently going up and down, and now it's sort of balancing out. It's still moving, but it's sort of balancing. Right. It's going a little bit slower. It's slowing down, and eventually, you're right. This is exactly how I envision it. Actually, that will eventually that flux and that polarity will sort of balance itself out until there's a nice kind of hum, maybe like an om sound. I should probably, before it gets too late, I'd like to try to somewhat explain why I don't believe in the Big Bang Theory as it's currently described.
Do we have time for that? I mean,
sure. Yeah, man, we can go for it. And I still wanted to get was it? You got to get out your websites and all your contact info and stuff too.
In fact, you can also
do that at the end.
Okay, yeah, and hopefully you can maybe provide some of that in the description.
We'll provide links and everything. No problem.
Okay, well, I can't bring myself to believe that the universe somehow spontaneously sprung into existence for the first time 13 to 20 billion years ago from a singularity point, as described in the Big Bang Theory. That view just seems very nonsensical to me and always has. I've always had trouble with creation theories because no matter what initiated the beginning, whether it was a Big Bang or a God, something must have initiated the initiator and so on, leading into an infinite chain of causation. So in terms of ultimate creation, both views seem to always dig a deeper hole to me. As illogical as it sounds, try to imagine a state before anything existed, a state which has no atomic particles, no gravity, no magnetism, no light, not even space or time, just absolutely nothing. Now, how can something just spontaneously spring into existence from nothing? I mean, even if everything sprang from some type of hot, dense point for the very first time ever, how did that happen? How did the universe become unevenly distributed if it came from what should have been a uniformly dense, symmetrical point of origin? And if that initial dense singularity point wasn't symmetrical and uniform, then what caused it to be non-uniform and asymmetrical?
Lawrence Krauss would say there's quantum fluctuations, and that nothing. It's perfectly feasible that the universe sprang out of nothing because really what he's really talking about is that nothing is not nothing on a quantum level. There are these.
So he would say there are quantum rules.
The nothingness is unstable, yeah, and that there are laws of nature that
even those
superseded and they pre-existed the Big Bang. That's the idea. And so in a sense, that's not nothing. And that's all speculation and postulation.
Yeah, there's also a lot of things I don't agree with when it comes to quantum theory, but that's a whole other podcast.
Sure. I mean, things behave differently on a quantum level, and what you see on that microscopic subatomic level does not necessarily correspond to what goes on the macro level. Although it may in some ways, but it's wrong as the New Agers would do to make this. They sort of conflate, whatever's going on the quantum level. Then that must be how things operate, and superposition, and I mean, I do believe in entanglement, but these ideas of spooky action at a distance and the double split experiment, where observer effect, all these different things. I believe what's happening is that on a subatomic level, general relativity, it breaks down, and it's not. It's not in line with quantum theory, and they're sort of incongruent because what's happening is you're entering like another dimension. You're entering another realm where the laws like the epicenter of a black hole. When you reach the event horizon of a black hole, time and space as we know it break down, and the laws of physics just no longer apply. And that's exactly what was going on with the singularity. Milliseconds before the Big Bang, the laws of physics break down because what we're seeing. Let me just say this real quick, and I'll small point real quick, and then you can finish. That what you were just describing, that nothingness. And it seems unbalanced, right? That all this energy and matter, everything in the universe just came out of nowhere, out of this minuscule point of infinite density and heat and energy. Well, that's because they don't know, because they don't actually know, and that's where there's the science and the observation and empirical evidence stops. So they're just postulating and theorizing. So it's real simple. It's that we can't see what was before and what was beyond because it was a different set of laws. It was a different set of physical laws. So, but that doesn't mean that there was nothing there. Everything that exists was on the other side of that Big Bang in some other form. And what we have is we just can't observe it. We can only observe using our instruments and using our mathematical computations according to these physical laws of nature. So it's what you have is a breakdown of the laws of nature, but not a beginning or a
yeah, I've heard two different camps on that, where some would claim, and I've even heard documentaries describe it this way. They'll say, in the beginning, there was a bang. And but some have now come forward and said, well, that doesn't necessarily, we're not necessarily claiming that there was nothing and that something came from nothing. We're just saying that it all came from this singularity. And what happened before that, or there's speculation and they don't know. But I do plan to get to that as well. But in terms of what mainstream science is saying about it right now, because I got a few notes on that. But I also never understood how this singularity point could be super hot if time and space did not yet exist. And because in order for something to be extremely hot, it has to involve fast-moving particles and space. Right. But in order to have fast-moving particles, you have to have time and space.
What they're describing is the expansion. They're not describing the singularity. They're describing the expansion that took place just
a millisecond after.
Yeah, just seconds afterwards. At how it went from an infinite point of density to something the size of a school bus to something the size of a planet in like less than microseconds. I don't know all the specific calculations, but I actually have a video where Neil deGrasse Tyson breaks it all down mathematically. It's pretty fascinating. But the point is, they're describing what transpired. I mean, we're talking about the Higgs boson particle that was emitted. This is what happened, with the Large Hadron Collider in Switzerland. How they basically discovered this particle that is the genesis of every. It reflects the conditions right after the Big Bang, and so they can understand that. But again, we're saying right after the Big Bang. The singularity is just a speculation, and really it's a big question mark. But it's very simple for us. I mean, look at my icon for a minute, right? Look at the tree. Look at the tree of life.
Yeah. Okay.
That center in the trunk. I mean, I never got to actually explain it, but we could save it for another episode. That trunk, that middle part, kind of like a funnel. That is the Big Bang, and you can just take your pick, go up or go down. That's the universe. The universe is expanding outward in every direction, because this wasn't a moment. There wasn't the first moment in time. This was the first moment of time. It expanded outward in every direction, in an unbelievable speeds. Yeah,
you're describing my painting.
You better finish that painting, man, because we got. You got to share it with the world. But basically, talking about an hourglass. Okay, if this is a physical model that will help, even though it's not necessarily accurate, because like I said, it expanded outward in every direction all at once. So we're thinking more of like a bubble that expands, but it helps to visualize it. You have an hourglass shape, basically, or like a tree with the branches and the roots. But you have an hourglass where the really skinny part in the center, that's the singularity, and then it expands outward in one direction. It just keeps going, and then what was on the other side of that? Well, what was on the other side of that was the exact same thing, just going in the opposite direction. Right. So let me put this in a sort of metaphorical religious language, or anthropomorphic personified language. God essentially existed and has always existed, and existed before the Big Bang, and it condensed itself into that point and then exploded outward into everything that we see. So it became an unconscious set of physical laws that are now coalescing and coming back together again through conscious life, and literally becoming that singularity once more. Okay. And it's an interesting fact that the singularity, the word singularity, is described. They use it to describe what was before the Big Bang, and they use it to describe what happens when artificial intelligence, when AI goes online and actually grows exponentially and takes over everything and becomes a self-regulating autonomous life force on its own. So you have the two polarities where that's even intuitively, our scientists know that what singularity represents is the infinite. It's God. It's the infinite expansion.
I remember hearing you discuss this in the podcast the other day, and I remember thinking this was another one of those moments where I was like, I was like, this is sad because they're not getting him, and they didn't.
Oh no, I got shut down. They completely they argue with me, and this has nothing to do with it. That's irrelevant. And I was like, dude, it's actually on.
I was so desperately wanting to just pop in there and say, I get you.
Well, join us next time, guys. I mean, we do it every Sunday, man. The Philosophy of Science.
I kind of have a rule that when there's 4 or more, it gets a little.
Oh yeah. I agree. No, this is what I've been influencing Chandler. I've been telling him from the beginning that you got to have less people in order just to have a coherent show.
Yeah, 3 is. It's probably max for me,
Yeah.
And me being one of the third, me being one of the 3.
Especially, we got these important points, and we want to really communicate this stuff, and we can't be, arguing and talking over each other, and it's just.
If you had a bunch of well-mannered, very respectful people, you could have 10, But if you have a lot of egos and some inconsiderate people, it can be tough.
Let's just say there's a personality clash. I mean, you have a very unique kind of lineup of guys there that our personalities are.
Again, I noticed in that last podcast, y'all were really starting to feel each other's to let the other talk, and I really enjoyed that one and thought that y'all
on certain levels we agree, because on the levels where we do agree, I guess it's feeding our egos because we're like, we got help now. We're making our helping somebody else is helping us make our points.
But even when y'all disagreed, y'all did it more respectfully as a collective this time. And it was easier and funner to listen to, and I think y'all accomplished a lot. Even when y'all didn't agree, I thought y'all really did a good job of presenting your points. People were letting other people talk. Chandler was, I noticed he was stepping up and moderating better. So
he did, yeah. I thanked him for that. He was actually being a lot. He has trouble being assertive, and he's very sort of passive. He's an introvert himself, so definitely, I've been working on him. It's starting to show now. He's stepping up a little bit and growing some cojones. That's a good thing.
But I guess to get back to the thing here, the point, another main reason I have, and you kind of touched on it on the last thing that you were kind of covering about the singularity. Another main reason I have trouble with this Big Bang Theory is because I believe it implies a finite universe with an edge. I believe the universe is infinite in all directions. In other words, as I wrote in my essay for that contest we partook in.
That contest! Don't remind me.
don't bring that up.
Bad memories.
But I wrote in that if a yellow butterfly ventured out far enough, it would eventually emerge from a yellow butterfly. And I don't know what your view is on this. Like not only do I believe that we are currently in an atom. But an object on a larger scale. We are within all possible objects within the whole tapestry of what is required for the whole thing.
You're speaking of the holographic universe, or the fractal nature of things, where everything is really a version of every. It's also called correspondence in Hermeticism. It's called correspondence, where everything is really a fractal, and it's a version of everything else. Like when I say a hologram, I don't mean something that's not real. I mean how holographic images can form three-dimensional illusions, because each part of it actually contains the whole, so you can see it from all sides, even though there's nothing.
And it's a repeating pattern. This pattern of the allness repeats. But if we were to somehow expand and keep expanding or keep venturing out, I do believe that I would eventually come out of a hairbrush, for example. And if I kept going, I would again come out another hairbrush, only slightly moved, a little differently. Maybe
I actually I get what you're saying. And I don't think a lot of the listeners will get this, but I do get what you're saying. I mean, you're talking about the infinite possibilities, and you're really talking about scale. Like no matter how far you go on the micro scale and the microcosm, and no matter how far you go out in the macro universe, they will eventually connect and overlap each other, and they continue infinitely. And we're talking about the Mandelbrot program. I mean, if you've watched the Mandelbrot,
that term sounds familiar, but I don't know that.
It's a computer simulation. It's a program that shows. So it was to help scientists understand that the expansion of the universe and how. And
I love that
quantum scale, like how everything No matter what. Okay, you take an object.
You're talking about those the fractal art.
Yeah, you look like it looks like a bug kind of, but any point, any position, any aspect of that form, when you zoom in on it at a microscopic scale, you have the same pattern repeated over and over again.
In fact,
that's pi. I mean, all you have to do is do the equations mathematically. That's exactly how nature functions. It always continues to reproduce itself infinitely. So there's never an equal equation where it balances out, and that's exactly the contrast and the flux and the polarity that we were speaking of earlier that keeps it going. That's why there's endless varieties of form.
Yeah, in fact, I saw a documentary where they actually went into great detail in how the way branches grow and leaves grow, that they said it matched that fractal principle and those equations. And I really wanted to learn more about what the actual equation is, just because that was impressive to me.
Just look up pi. Just look up the mathematical.
Well, I know what pi is, 3.14. But what does that tell me? 3.14. Is that the ratio? I mean, are you talking about the ratio?
No. The equation that it never.
Because they can't just be applying.
This ties in with the golden ratio, the golden mean, and how it continues to reproduce itself slightly different each time, and it never balances itself out, and that allows for an endless variety of forms and shapes and biodiversity. That's the mathematical equation of the universe. Really, in my book, I get into this, man, and you know what? To keep this simple, what happens when you take a mirror and you put it in front of another mirror, and you see your reflection, and then you slightly, turn it just a little bit. Mirrors. You have an infinite number of reflections that continue, and each time you shift that mirror a little bit, it shifts the entire. You have a whole universe there, basically, and so
I've actually used that analogy. The barbershop mirrors is what I refer to them as, the cosmic barbershop mirrors. That's the way the universe repeats itself and the pattern. So that's neat that you use that example. So.
But what we have, I mean, on a fundamental level, and I'll just say this in a poetic sense. I mean, either people are going to get it or they're not going to get it. I don't think Chandler got it the other night when I mentioned it. But what you have in existence is essentially not the creator of the universe, but the universe itself that is a creative power, a creative force, looking at itself in the mirror. There's a reflection there, and it's just literally exploring its own reflection. And every little bit of movement, every little shift in a position creates alternate universes, and it goes on forever and ever and ever. And that's what you have. You have a multi-dimensional. I call it the omniverse. I don't believe we live in a universe. I believe we live in an omniverse where you have every and all possibilities, infinite possibilities, and we are just one little branch, one little leaf on the endless cycle of the tree of life. So,
well, I've always been cautious about the infinite possibility thing, but I think I know what you're trying to say. But there are certain possibilities. Again, like there's the possibility that 1 + 2 = 33. That possibility does not exist and never will.
And I don't mean infinite possibilities in this configuration of this universe. I mean infinite possibilities of the universe itself. That each time the universe big bangs and then collapses in on itself and reassembles and then reforms and then expands out again. That's what I mean. I mean the multiverse exists simultaneously at all times, and it's also. From our perspective, it's in the future and it's in the past, and it just continues on forever. Right. I don't mean in this particular manifestation of omnia. I mean that this is the purpose of existence itself. That each time it's just literally breathing, man. It's just breathing. It's a heartbeat. It's respiration. It's precipitation. It's blood flow. It's the way water flows and the cycles of transitioning from a solid to a liquid to a gas, and on and on and on. One of my it's a life cycle. I mean, we're literally talking about the life cycles of the universe.
One of my favorite movies is Circle of Iron. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but Bruce Lee wrote it, and it also used to be called The Silent Flute. And if you get a chance, really try to find that and watch it. Circle of Iron or The Silent Flute. And it's a quest for knowledge. And at the very end, this is actually one of the movies that inspired me to a ridiculous level to go on my own journey and to search for truth. This movie just really awakened something in me. It was one of the catalysts that inspired me and sparked that,
And there are many movies and many books and many luminaries that we could all sort of point to that have influenced and inspired us. If I can give a recommendation, I would say watch Mr. Nobody with Jared Leto. That is an incredible film that just will make you question everything, question reality. When I finished that film, I wanted to I wanted to go out and just dance. I wanted to just stretch out and really experience my own body, my own existence. I wanted to do something really visceral and kind of carnal, but at the same time, in a transcendent way. I wanted to just scream and laugh and just do cartwheels. And run on a beach. It's such a weird thing. That movie, you saw it though. You're saying you saw it?
Yeah, and sadly, it didn't do well among most viewers. The rating.
Oh man, it's profound.
I loved it. Yeah.
That it represents everything. It's speaking of the multiverse. It's speaking of the nature of time, and kind of I guess something else that echoes this was the Curious Case of Benjamin Button with Brad Pitt. That was interesting as well. That what we perceive, as growth and aging could, if it were in reverse, and how the memory is being lost as the person's getting older because they're actually physically becoming younger. Well, there's truth in that, man. There is actually this very intuitive truth to the idea of a push and pull of progress and resistance, and it ties in with everything that we're talking about. But definitely, Mr. Nobody. It was a fascinating.
Two other movies that inspired me when I was very young was The Dark Crystal and The Never-Ending Story. Those had a profound.
I used that theme song for my my intro for my dedication, my acknowledgement and dedication series of videos that I made for to promote the Pantheism anthology book. That was the exploration. And I don't know if anybody really grasped this, but what I was representing there, that journey, that sort of exciting, fun, incredible, mystical journey where you see from the cosmic perspective, and then there's kind of a descent, and it goes down. It travels through this wormhole until it finally comes out, and there's this balancing sort of equilibrium at the end. What I was representing there was the journey of the Omnia, or the journey of the divine, incarnating into physical matter. So you have this potential energy that's just cosmic and infinite and all knowing, all seeing, all intelligent, everywhere, omnipotent. And then it condenses, it coalesces, it takes a journey where it essentially falls from grace to become this physical universe, to become what we perceive as nature, and then it'll transition and go through the whole process and the cycle again in reverse.
Yeah, that's one of the main
represented.
Yeah, that's one of the main themes through that epics novel that I'm wanting to write that I told you about. That I was kind of described it as it's my Star Wars trilogy or whatever. Right. But it's a whole quest thing, and it shows how the unfolding of the universe, the story of the universe, the story of man, the story of the hero and the seeker, and how it all comes back around and cycles back to the beginning, kind of a thing.
You know what? The hero's journey, as outlined by Joseph Campbell, I completely agree with you that there are these ubiquitous themes, these universal motifs that exist because they are inherent in nature. We're literally sort of personifying and retelling the eternal, timeless story. And that's why the Jesus myth is so enduring, and it
right, exactly,
because you have the fall from grace and the struggle, and then the sacrifice, and then the rebirth and the renewal, and it's timeless. It's beautiful. I mean, every good story follows that model, that pattern.
I'm hoping to express one of the it'll never be perfected it'll never be perfect. It'll never be 100%, but I want to try to achieve trying to get to the essence of that ultimate story and those ultimate themes. And it's almost like the story of all stories in one kind of a thing.
You got to read Portals, man. If you read Dreaming of Portals, I think it'll set you off, man. I think you'll get so pissed off and mad at me because I created exactly what you're talking about that you'll end up trying to outdo me, and you'll create something even better. Yeah.
I remember seeing, and I told you about this, I do remember seeing a lot of similarities. I've actually got a lot of this epic novel written in so many different chunks and drawings and things, but to edit it one day and to finish it is going to be a monstrous undertaking.
You got to start somewhere, man. Don't let it overwhelm you. I mean, it might be daunting.
Right.
But it could be
and by the way,
it could change the world, man. You know, don't.
By the way, that movie Circle of Iron that I was telling you about, I forgot to finish my point on that. He at the very end of this quest. He's been looking for this book. It's the book of all knowledge, of all wisdom, and he finally gets to the ultimate level, to this temple where it's like the sacred book that they guard, and he's finally given the privilege to sit on this throne of wisdom and open up this book. And when he finally opens up this book, it's a huge mirror, a round mirror with kind of a yin-yang-y kind of trim to it, and then he turns the page. And basically, every time he turns the page, it's nothing but mirrors on the left and on the right, the left page, the right page. And so what it was trying to convey and communicate was that he was the book. He was looking within. There's no book with higher wisdom than the material within, the insight.
And this ties into what I say, man, that you want to understand life, you want to understand God, you want to understand, the mysteries of the universe. Just take one little chunk, one little piece of anything in nature and study it and examine it, and you will find the answers. You just have to. You have to recognize that literally God is in all things. That's why we're we believe God is in all things. So
the whole package is in everything. I tell people all the time that the greatest Bible, the greatest book, the greatest Bible is nature itself. You read those pages of the pages of nature, you'll learn what it will attempt to teach you. Not everybody will be able to interpret or read the language of truth and wisdom, but if they at least try and look to nature, they will at least come a lot further than they would trying to read a lot of other, material that was man-made, so to speak. So yes, I totally agree with that.
And then maybe one final point. I don't know if we can top because we're getting to that. I could sense the elevation of ideas and thoughts, and this is like the journey of apotheosis, where we're all making sort of metaphorically and physically, tangibly. In the evolution of our species. But remember the Dark Crystal, right? What was it about? It was about duality. And you have the Skeksis, which were the evil, corrupted, sort of fallen version of what they originally were. We find this all out at the end, of course. And you have the mystics. The mystics were the wise, ancient, sort of the healers, the shamans, and the Skeksis they were like these vulture-like, gangly-looking evil creatures that fed on other life forms and were absorbed the life essence of these other little creatures and stuff. And then at the end, you actually, there's this incredible poetic. It was a really powerful message to me. It was one of my favorite films. I mean, it was incredible puppetry work with Jim Henson's creature effects there. But what you have is they come back together, and because I didn't understand at first why when they killed one of the Skeksis did the mystic disappear. I never understood that. I was like there, and then you start to connect the dots, and you realize they're actually connected. They're actually sprung from the same mold, and at the very end, when the shard is returned, through the sacrifice, I can't remember the names of the characters of the.
You're doing pretty good.
The Gelflings characters.
Yeah, the Gelflings.
When the shard is returned to the larger form of the crystal, it's no longer a dark crystal. It shines out light, and they actually. Sort of in this prophetic sense, like the mystics knew that was their journey. They had to reach their other selves, that where they had split from themselves, and they merge and they stand up and they become one united sort of ethereal being, like this incredibly beautiful collaboration of the two forms come together, and they said, thank you for your sacrifice, and you've brought us together again, where we're, many millennia ago we split from ourselves, and now we're one again, and actually, and then the whole it was beautiful, because the whole land, like the whole planet, all of a sudden becomes the curse is lifted in the green, and everything grows, and it's shining beautiful, and and so it's that incredible story of sacrifice and love. And then of course she's returned to him, and she comes back to life. They give her back the gift of life for sacrifice.
It was also a yin yang thing for me. The Skeksis were the yang, or the however you want to look at it, and then the mystics were the yin, and the yin and the yang finally come back together, and they create a lot of
I can't believe we haven't mentioned it. Taoism, and a lot of Taoism and Taoism involved there. That this is pantheism is really rooted and grounded in the notions, the ideas of Eastern philosophy of Taoism. Taoism is what it represents. I mean, we're talking about the polarity and the contrast, and how each one side should not be marginalized and discredited and oppressed. That it actually is necessary for the whole, for there to be this equilibrium and balance. There need to be a reverence and a respect for both aspects. We shouldn't suppress and deny our natural instincts, our primitive drives to fight and to flee and to eat and to mate and to be fearful, or our passions. We have to just find ways to channel them in healthy and beneficial, cathartic ways, not to suppress or deny those things. And on the other side, I mean, we shouldn't be all logic and rationale, and just entirely left brain. That there needs to be that balance of an intellect and emotion, and so we don't give in to our base, instinctual inclinations completely, but we recognize that there is value in them, and we also we don't let our minds dictate and control everything, and so we lose touch with our own humanity, and we lose our heart, and we lose our empathetic side. So I feel like on some level I keep promoting the primitive part, but I'm trying to say that there just needs to be balance and equilibrium.
Yes. I guess since it's getting late, I'll go ahead and try to finish some of my last thoughts. I did want to try to express a little more about the Big Bang. I just wanted to say, is it? Am I able to? I mean, do we have a little more time?
Oh, sure. Yeah, man. Go for it. I mean, we said we'd go till 11:30. It's 11:27, but I mean, really, however long you need, go for it.
I wanted to add that I'm not entirely opposed to the idea of local Big Bangs and big crunches on a local level. In fact, I believe Big Bangs and big crunches likely happen throughout the infinite cosmos, expanding and collapsing like one infinite cosmic bubble bath. Things in nature explode all the time in that fashion, like stars, and at all levels and at many different time frames as they are perceived by us perceivers. Take a piece of fruit, for example, and the way it grows upon a tree. We humans see it grow relatively slowly, but there is a time frame where that event could be perceived by another life form to be to violently explode into existence. And the opposite can be said too. Our sector of the universe, or as scientists refer to it, the known universe, could have been perceived to slowly and calmly grow into the form that it is today, like a piece of fruit on the tree, instead of strictly a violent, uncontrolled explosion. And especially within this model or this framework that I described, where you have this unending universe and there is no edge to it. So you have all these objects, and we're within this infinite thing that can never fully collapse the totality of it can't.
When I say the big crunch, I actually mean, okay, real quick. When I say the big crunch, I don't mean in the sense that the totality of existence will come to an end, or there'll be a heat death or whatever. I'm talking about the nature of things as they are now will actually cease, because consciousness will rise to such a level where there'll be a unification of all minds, of all knowledge, of all intellect, of all intention, and our own consciousness, the collective consciousness of all life forms, will actually begin to reshape the environment, and we are coalescing. That big crunch is a crunch in terms of cohesion, in terms of our consciousness. I believe not necessarily physically. You know what I mean?
I believe that pinch that you're describing does happen on our, like, for example, our known universe, and it can even extend beyond that for what we know of as that thing that will one day do that crunch. But I always believe that there is also an infinite version that goes beyond that is unaffected. I mean, I shouldn't say unaffected, but it's unaffected in terms of the crunch, in terms of it doesn't.
Let's see. Okay. See if this makes sense. If I can put it into.
Because in another scale, that's just a tiny little atom that did its little dance. Sure. Yeah,
you got it. You understand the fractal nature of the universe. Put it this way. Okay. We believe, we think, we theorize, we postulate, and we have pretty good evidence that the physical universe, as we know it, began 13.8 billion years ago. But that doesn't mean that was the beginning of nature. Nature has always existed and always will exist. But what we see is the beginning of this particular configuration of nature. Right. And this particular configuration of nature may come to an end and be transformed, because really everything is just transformed. Energy cannot be created or destroyed. It never dies. It only dissipates and then reassembles and transforms into something else. So what you're really saying is the universe as a whole had no beginning and had no end. It's just our observable particular manifestation of these laws of nature, but nature itself has always existed and always will.
And even the materialization of it, in my opinion, and now this may be well beyond what our known universe is, but even the materialization and the unfolding of it elsewhere is always present. Like again, our known universe is just one atom that may be convulsing, doing its little heartbeat thing within the wing of a butterfly.
It's poetic, it's beautiful, and it's mind blowing when you consider it. But we've seen this sort of this metaphor played out at the end of Men in Black, where the little marbles, every universe, every galaxy is really just a marble, where some larger life forms are playing marbles, and it just keeps going, because at some point one of the aliens says, you humans, you just can't get over the idea of size, and size is irrelevant. Size is relative, and you don't realize that the actual galaxy was in the little jewel hanging around the cat's neck, and so people have often theorized, and they'll say, well, maybe our universe is just it's just a bubble, it's just a blink in time, we're just a pimple on the backside of some other gigantic animal. And it's true, because the further you go on the micro scale, I mean, you look at the connections of neurons in the brain, and then they have the simulation and the model of what our physical universe actually looks like, and you have these filaments and these patterns, these fractal patterns that look like veins, and they branch out, and they look exactly the same. That like the universe is really just a set of neurons in the brain of some larger organism. And of course, many people disregard this and they just dismiss it, and they'll say, that's Gaia theory and all that. That's all crap. That's not how the universe functions and whatever. But I think there's absolutely some very intuitive truth to that.
Here's what may be a kick in the cornflakes for a lot of listeners that may be listening to this one day. Many well-respected scientists, both throughout history and now, don't agree with the Big Bang or expanding universe theory for multiple observable reasons that seem to contradict those theories. And one of the most important ones being that the the certain observations of quasars during the early 1960s by a man, I think his name was Halton Arp or something like that, who is often referred to as the modern Galileo. He revealed that red shifts are not always due to the speed of an object relative to another, as Hubble's law suggests. The fainter a star, the faster it's moving away. I never understood why. In fact, I never understood why scientists were brave enough to even make that strict assumption that the fainter a star is, the faster it's moving away, or that that's the only thing responsible for red shifts. Because in fact, we already know gravity can alter the frequency of electromagnetic waves, like when light is emitted from the planet or towards it. A lighter mass shows a larger red shift compared to a heavier mass, if I'm not mistaken. Another possible good reason to believe that light waves emitted from distant galaxies mainly shifted towards the red spectrum is because they are being slowed down by all the stellar dust along the way, giving a false impression of an expanding universe. This would explain why the further out a star is measured to be, the faster it seems to be moving from us. Right. And I finally came across I finally came across a really great documentary, not a few years back, which you'll have to see, by the way, that reveals how a growing number of reputable scientists now believe that the Big Bang never happened. And it's the title of it is The Universe, Cosmology Quest, which is actually a very boring title. They should have called it something like, The Big Bang Never Happened or something like that. But it validates many of my long-held suspicions that a lot of people actually attacked me for, or didn't take me seriously. That the universe is not expanding as described by mainstream scientists, and that the Big Bang Theory and dark matter, they link this all up. These great scientists that finally came forward in this documentary, they discuss how one thing after another, there was a lot of corruption involved and a lot of politics, but it's extremely interesting how they piece together the history of why this theory got pushed forward, including things like dark matter, which were actually created as a fix to fix some of the results they were getting.
The mathematical equations, right?
Yeah. In order
equations didn't work out, so they end up just basically it's like the singularity. It's I don't know, so we have to just come up with something to
they
fill
kept
the gaps.
coming up with these new constants and these new variables and these new conditions.
It's fascinating. I've heard that the concept that it's not. Well, let's just look at it. Let's look at it historically. Okay, I mean you have the geocentric model, of the universe, basically, that the sun revolves. I mean, the sun revolves around the Earth, and then that was updated. And then you have the heliocentric model, and you have Kepler and
in fact, in that documentary, they actually allude to that as an analogy of what's going on. How they in the beginning they had all these epicycles or orbits. The crazy model that they had in order to force their view that the Earth.
They thought it was spherical. They thought it was the center of. They thought it was a geocentric sort of
the
galaxy universe. And then it changed and it shifted, and originally it was spherical, and then it became. We realized that it's actually an elliptic. That the way that the planets rotate and revolve it's an elliptical orbit, and then it kept changing. All I was trying to say was you see this shift of emergent information. Then we think now it's the steady state of the universe that it just. Well, they originally believed that it was just constant and that the universe is all there is and whatever. And then they went back to the Big Bang thing, which kind of made a lot of creationists happy and said, see, God did create everything. There was a point in the beginning, and they got happy about that. And then there's they realized, there's this expansion. Everything is moving away from each other, so it's going to eventually slow down. And they're like, oh, no, wait a minute, it's actually speeding up, and the galaxies are moving further and further away from each other. So it keeps changing, and these models continue to be updated. And I agree. I mean, knowledge and information is in a constant state of emergence. So we shouldn't hold too firmly to any of these postulations and theories about cosmology. Have you heard of the electric universe, guys? The plasma model of plasma cosmology.
They talk about the plasma model in that documentary, I believe, and the steady state model as well. And
it does account for a lot of the phenomenon and stuff. But then again, that would prove Einstein wrong, and there's so much. People have a lot invested in this stuff, and they say that science corrects itself, but there are many scientists that are fairly stubborn.
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring that up, because that was my next point. In this documentary, several prominent, innovative scientists have actually had their opposing views unethically suppressed by many respectable institutions.
I mean, this is done for free energy. The same thing with free energy and all these great clean technologies and stuff are continuously suppressed, and because the big oil companies are running a monopoly on everything. So I think it was Emanuel Velikovsky. He was in the early 1900s. He had proposed. I think he was the first to propose it.
To propose what?
The electric universe.
Oh, okay.
Do you know who it was?
No, I actually don't. Because I'm not that familiar with it.
Yeah, I heard a few shows on Coast to Coast about it.
But those who tried to propose like new ideas or go against the idea of the expanding universe, the Big Bang Theory, they paid the price. They would sometimes be asked to resign by the institutions or the universities they work for, or be outright fired, or not be granted tenure, or not be given promotions, or simply ignored. Sometimes funding would be severely cut for programs or professors who went against it. You'll see all this in the documentary. There was a lot of really crooked politics at the top, and scientific discovery for many decades greatly slowed down, not just in astronomy, but in science in general, because all the newcomers, all the students were building their views and their studies on this expanding universe theory or model instead of a steady state one. And unfortunately, these so-called reputable science institutions and universities have kind of become the new priesthoods. Meaning you basically believe
that the parallel is can't be denied there. That
you believe what they tell you to believe, and it's like Catholicism all over again.
Yeah, it's just like the religious institutions.
So it's repeating itself. Like the those who are in authority high up. The experts, the so-called experts, they're the ones who try to tell everybody the worldview and how everything works. And many theoretical physicists today, even, they pretend to understand it and fool themselves and others into believing it, that it's perfectly logical. And sadly, theoretical physics has become further and further removed from experimentation. And as a general rule, which I now live by, if someone can't explain a concept in simple terms without all the complex math and fancy terminology, then it is very likely that the concept is flawed or is not to be understood because in actuality it is illogical or nonsensical. And the same thing, I feel the same way about like relativity and quantum mechanics. There are aspects of those theories that I agree with, and there are experimental results I agree with. It's just that their interpretation of those results, those experimental results, I strongly disagree with. So
sure, yeah, many people have vested interest in stuff, and it's just like the religious leaders. They say, truth goes through. Schopenhauer says. Truth goes through three stages, right? Like first it's ridiculed, and then it's violently opposed, and then third it's accepted as being self-evident. And all the martyrs and all the great, the luminaries that were burned alive, whether whoever it might be, Bruno or any of the greats. Galileo was persecuted, notoriously, but
a lot of figures.
At least he lived. But all these people who were really the on the cutting edge, and they advanced our knowledge and stuff. Like it was very difficult to find mainstream acceptance. To go against the status quo it's like the hardest thing to do. And this is, I mean, it's interesting because we have our own theories, and here in a sense, pantheism and biopan represent a kind of a synthesis, a marriage of science and spirituality. A philosophy that completely integrates and it provides essentially like a theory of everything. For me, I believe we may not only live in an electric universe, but I believe we live in a biological universe. I believe that the entirety of the universe is just a living system. It's a systems model, of biological life on every level, from the macro scale all the way down to the micro. That's why I use the toroidal model, because that's exactly what the universe is doing on every level, is transforming itself and regenerating and recycling, like the Ouroboros, the snake swallowing its own tail. It continues.
Can you refamiliarize myself with the electric universe, like in a statement? Because it's been a while since
we have the four fundamental laws of physics. We have electromagnetism and gravity and strong and weak nuclear force. You've got entropy in there, but the idea is that instead of the way that all the planets and stars and galaxies are operating, which is generally attributed to electromagnetism and gravity, that the way that a lot of the weird kind of phenomenon, I mean, even you take our sun, like the nuclear fusion, the way that our sun is continuously, that it's made up of helium and hydrogen, and it's continuously producing. The idea is that space is a vacuum, right? And so everything, there's no oxygen there, and that everything is kind of self-generating, and it's centrifugal force and gravity are what's creating these spheres, these spherical shapes, and creating the orbits, and things are repelling each other, and gravity is doing all this work. Well, the electric universe model is essentially saying that it's because what you see in terms of like the heat from the sun and stuff. That's why the surface is actually they say that the surface is cooler than the center, or that the center is not as hot as the surface. And the difference with the electric universe like accounts for some of these weird anomalies, and even like what sunspots are. They're like these it's difficult to explain because I don't know the lingo very well, but I mean I understand the basic concept that.
But they don't believe in it like a Big Bang event, do they? I mean, it doesn't.
Actually, I'm not sure. I'm not sure about the postulates about the origins of the universe, but it's more about the function of the universe. That what we see and the way that the planets and the way that the stellar bodies interact with each other. The idea, the premise is that it follows much more. In terms of electricity, that everything is operating more on the lines of currents of energy, and instead of magnetism. Everything essentially in the way that the solar systems and the galaxies operate comes down to magnetism, and nuclear fusion and stuff like that. And what the electric universe says is it's actually that everything they're really just charged particles. That are there's fields of energy around everything, and it's operating in terms of like an electrical system instead of a gravitational system. I mean, that's probably a really shitty way. I have a friend who actually could break it down even better. He's really, really into it, and I'll connect you with him. This guy.
I was just trying to find out if I should revisit that, and because I just barely am familiar with.
There's some truth to it. It also gets into some weird conspiracy theories about Nibiru and Planet X, and how as this rogue, whatever it is, a rogue planet or a brown dwarf came into proximity with the Earth, it created these catastrophic events, and that the what do they call the electric I can't remember the name. The poles, the electric arch of the sparks flying off this thing look like horns, and that like it was just blazoned in our memories. And so this is concept. It ties in with a lot of ancient mythology and stuff like that, with Moloch and the destroyer, the nemesis. Actually, something like that was there was kind of a cool representation of it in The Fifth Element. Remember that planet that was going to like destroy everything?
Yes.
And it was coming, and then I love that movie. That's another great movie. It has some great themes in there about the elements and stuff. But anyway, so the nemesis planet, that the way that it was viewed, because as it came into what's that word, man? Help me out. There's a word where planets come into proximity with each other and they perturb each other because of their magnetic or their electrical field, and that was the idea, was that it looked like horns, and then that's the origin of our concept of the devil, and it ties in. There's a lot of weird probably non sequiturs there, but it ties into all that stuff. So some of the electric universe model gets into a lot of sort of hokey stuff, but it's definitely fascinating, and it does account for a lot of the phenomenon that we observe.
Well, I guess some of the things I'd like to say in closing before we have to,
yeah, man, shoot, just give out your information too. Tell us where we can find you, and like what your main gig is now, like what you're working on, and
okay, I'll try to do a little of that.
Just your contact information.
I guess in closing, there are too many scientists who play along and pretend to understand some of these, outlandish ideas due to ego and fear of appearing incompetent, and that we should always be cautious of overly complicated ideas that we don't understand, and that we have to resort to all this mathematics and all these experts. Politicians and bankers have been using this trick for thousands of years. I'm always telling people we shouldn't allow ourselves to so easily bow down to what mainstream scientists tell us what to believe. Again, it reminds me of the classic Catholicism all over again, where only so-called experts on high get to tell everyone what the reality of the world is, and how we should never go against their assertions, and we just need to and that we just need to trust them or believe them, because that and too many people are afraid to go against the grain and object or say that isn't so. It's kind of like the emperor's new clothes kind of a thing, and I've kind of tried to tell this to a little bit in scientific pantheist group. Because I've kind of sparred with a few of them.
With that, that's.
I won't name names, but what they're doing is they're making the opposite mistake that so many people have made throughout history. We were a little too religious, a little too spiritual in the beginning, and now they're overcompensating and going way too far onto a almost worshiping. What the expert scientists are telling them. I love science. I love the scientific method. I respect it a great deal, and I think it's one of the greatest ways for us to predict the world and to better understand it. But hopefully, in conjunction with philosophical logic and reasoning. And there are certain things that people for too long, for decade after decade. That they just ignored because of the politics of it, and they kind of were even controlling what universities were teaching, and has really slowed down progress. And think about how many, and this affected me as well. For years and years, I believed in the Big Bang Theory, or I shouldn't say I believed it. Because it never rubbed me right, actually. I have so many memories of questioning it, even as when I was out of high school. But there were so many times where I would attempt to build my worldview or my model on that, because I assumed that they were like the adults minding the store, that they knew what they were talking about. And I didn't realize how much infighting and politics and fear-mongering and all this stuff that was going on, and all these great scientists that were suppressed and all these great ideas. And you find out, this happens in medicine, this happens, the cure for cancer, whatever, where I see this all the time, or better fuel, more efficient fuel, or a way to not even use oil, or, you see this everywhere. And science, we have to just stop bowing down to mainstream science is my last theme, my last warning.
Let's put it this way. Let's never let's never worship or idolize anything, and let's always remember, like as Christopher Hitchens would say, that every authority figure is really just a chromosome away from being a chimpanzee, and it shows. That really we can't really have any sacred cows, and we have to always remain humble and open to new and emergent information. And I would say the same thing, that just question authority and don't sell yourself short. Don't second guess yourself, because we have just as much potential and we have just as much access to the infinite and the divine as anyone else. So we can. It was always the sort of the small men and those who were the underdogs that rose to the top and then ended up changing the world and revolutionizing things for the better. So definitely have confidence, and if you have an intuitive idea or a theory or a thought or whatever, don't be afraid to put it out there, and definitely test it. All these things need to be tested. I mean, I submit to street epistemology all the time just to confirm that I don't want to delude myself. I care about the truth above all else. This isn't just something I'm doing that makes me feel good. I'm really trying to pinpoint and understand the cosmos, and I see things in this light that of course we're never going to reach that pinnacle and where we know everything, we understand everything. That's the whole purpose of life, is to experience novelty and learn new things. So we're always growing and we're always changing and evolving, and that's as it should be. That's the pleasure of it. That's the enjoyment. Is life itself is not static or truth it's not set in stone. It's not necessarily relative, and we're not talking about moral relativism here, but truth is
all knowledge is subject to change. But the very next day,
life is change. Everything is always shifting and changing. So
all we can do, the best we can do, is to take all that we think we know to be true, based on what we think is valuable evidence, valid evidence, and try to extrapolate a worldview. We need to do this as individuals and stop trying to just follow the leader and be, the blind leading the blind kind of a thing.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
I want people to try to start having their own independent thought, critical thinking, and not just buy into what they're told by the media or by mainstream science, and to really, because this is what, you were asking me about my pantheistic journey. This is what I did. I sat alone and I just thought about all these fundamental things that were taught to me. Some of them were wrong. Some, I found out, or, I still hold that, I believe that they're wrong. Like certain things about the laws of thermodynamics, I don't agree with all that. And I don't agree with all of the, theories of relativity or certain components of it, certain aspects of it. And same thing with quantum theory. So what I would do, and Einstein admitted he did this too, he would, even though there were certain things that they would believe at his time, he would sometimes ignore that and think, well, he would postulate another possibility and think, well, maybe that's wrong. And I would like for people to have the courage to entertain certain ideas, to entertain certain possibilities, and don't be afraid to kind of play around with it and to speculate. Theoretical physicists do it all the time. They speculate.
We can't be afraid to be wrong, but we also shouldn't completely exclude the fact that we might be right. Wouldn't you say?
Right.
And so yeah, man, I don't know. I mean, we've covered so much here, and this has been a long podcast, and I don't mind it at all, but I just don't want to lose people because.
Right. Yeah, that was my actual closing statement, and I will just go ahead and try to provide some links, and hopefully you can also provide these in the description. But I have a WordPress site where I put a lot of free essays that people can read for free to learn a lot about my philosophical views and my political views. And eventually I'm going to branch that out my own personal scientific theories and where I disagree with mainstream science. And I also currently have a page that displays a lot of my artwork, and I will be expanding that page, of course, in the future, hopefully soon.
You also have a book. I mean, you have your
yeah, I forgot to
right?
mention that. I have a book that's called The Forever All, a philosophical and spiritual let me remember. Oh, yeah, a philosophical and spiritual guide. Sadly, it's really hard to look that up on Amazon or Google, because the main title, The Forever All, that just doesn't do well with keywords. So it's good if you want to find that book, type in The Forever All and then my first name, Guyus. But you'll find that I have an ebook version, and I also have it in print. And you'll come across that if you just go to my WordPress site. I actually have a link that shows my ebook, and you'll find the information and the links to get all that. And that's at guyus.wordpress.com. And Guyus,
great, man. And you got your YouTube channel as well. I mean, that was focus for a while.
And for those who aren't familiar with how to spell my first name, that's Guyus. And youtube.com/Guyus Seralius. Now that one's a hard one to pronounce, so you'll have to write that one out. And then the other one is facebook.com/Guyus.Seralius. And send me a friend request, because I accept them all. So
yeah, we got to get you out of the shadows, man. Like you can't be an introvert forever, man. You gotta so many good ideas, and you're too everything you're saying, we resonate, man. We need more like you. So definitely.
I just get so engrossed in all these projects that I work on, and sometimes I'll go days without even looking at my Facebook page, or going onto YouTube, and I just get so immersed. And for some reason, I get to where I can't break away from a project. Like I have to follow that through. It's a weird obsessive compulsive thing of mine, I guess.
Well, I get it, man. You're an artist. I'm the same way with my writing, and definitely, we're all perfectionists in our own way. But yeah, I keep saying we have too much in common, man, to let this friendship sort of dissolve or just waste away.
Or not be taken advantage of.
Right. We got to stay connected, man, and let's do that, and hopefully you can join us again on the podcast. And I think my friends are really going to get a kick out of this, man. I think a lot of what you said really is going to resonate with my friend Jay, and definitely with Peter and Chandler. This may have been the breakthrough episode that's going to help him really understand what it's like, because he hasn't really been exposed to other pantheists besides George Ortega and myself. So it's a good thing to hear from another pantheist, to hear someone speak in the way that you do, and just to give a different perspective of some of the same ideas, just using your own language and your own personal take on it. So I appreciate the time, man. Thank you for spending so much time with us, and definitely going to have you back on. So let's just keep in touch. And anything else you want to say? A final word to the audience?
No, I think that's it. I think I got a lot off my chest, and I enjoyed the experience.
This is our source. This is our life. This is who we are. Please visit our website for more information about this life-changing philosophy. You can also join our Facebook groups by following the links provided in the description box below, and find fellowship with others who share these same ethics and ideals. Whoever you are not alone. The whole universe resides within you. Now and forever, in nature we trust.